All right. Are
Going
we?
to just to have a short welcome, everybody,
Mhm.
to our Spring PD Jam. This is part of the National Lewis Instructional Technologies Coach Program, so we're really excited to showcase our students. And first up, we have Heather. And if you would just introduce yourself briefly, Heather.
Mhm. All right. So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today for my YouTube for Math Instruction Professional Development course. And just a quick introduction on myself. I'm a fifth grade teacher, and this is my second year teaching. I went to Millikan University for my bachelor's, and I'm currently working on my master's in learning technologies. I love using technology in my class, and I was really hoping that I could learn about all of you as well and how you use technology in your classrooms. So it's okay if I start my presentation now?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Thanks
Okay,
so
great.
much.
Yeah, thank you. So first, I just wanted to ask everyone, what is the best use of your classroom time? So if we could just go around the room and introduce ourselves, and then if you could just tell me what do you think is the best use of your classroom time, and if you've ever tried flipped learning before or using videos for your instruction. So can we start with Janice?
Hi, I'm not a teacher yet, so I don't necessarily have that experience.
Okay.
I was a teacher's assistant, and what I can remember from her instruction, she did sometimes use YouTube
Okay.
videos for her math, and they have it was a third grade class, so it was really
Okay.
like animated, had the singing and the rhyming, just getting the students interested, and then just giving them uh, not necessarily just straight education, just made it fun
Mm-hmm.
for them. And I
Yeah.
thought it was a good idea because they had fun while they were learning at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. Jill?
Yeah, I'm currently not a classroom teacher either, so I
Okay,
don't
okay.
have that experience. It's been
Mm-hmm.
a while since I've been in a classroom, so that's also why I'm interested in some of the more current technologies and
Okay.
approaches, and getting more up to date on what's being used in the classroom.
All right. Diane?
Hi, I'm a colleague, a faculty member at NLU, teaching educational psychology courses primarily, but a colleague of Angela's in the learning sciences area. And Janice, I'm glad to see you. Janice was in my online class
Oh, nice.
this
Mm-hmm.
winter, so I'm glad you're here and
All right,
glad to
great.
meet you all.
All right, thank
So
you. You too.
looking forward to the
Mm-hmm.
session.
Awesome. Would you like to share anything, Dr. Alcordy?
Well, I like to use flipped learning in my online teaching, and
Mm-hmm.
I find it very, very successful in having people discuss on the discussion boards after they spend some time
Mm-hmm.
ingesting the material themselves. So thanks for asking, Heather.
Mm-hmm. Megan?
Hi. So, just in terms of, I'm a fourth grade teacher, so I find the best use of my classroom time being the time that I have available to do small group with students because I
Mm-hmm.
am in an inclusion setting. So, when I'm teaching, sometimes whole group, you're not necessarily meeting the needs of students that have IEPs or even students that need enrichment. So, what I like to do is free up as much of my time as possible to
Mm-hmm.
pull small groups and make the most of my instruction for students.
Oh, that's great. That's like what this is all about. All right, and Jeffrey?
Could you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the best use I teach engineering classes, so I always find the best use is when students are engaged in hands-on activities,
Mm-hmm.
actually creating and doing something on their own rather than sitting at their desk on their phones.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you everybody for sharing about that. And what this session is going to be about is it's going to be an introduction to video creation for math instruction, but this can also be used for different types of lessons. And we're going to be talking about flipped learning, and then you'll also be receiving various resources throughout this to help you get ready to try flipped learning in your own classroom. And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to ask. So one of our objectives for today is I'm just going to be introducing flipped learning concepts and its benefits. We're going to learn about video creation and how to implement those videos into your classrooms. And then we're also going to explore digital tools to assist you with that flipped instruction. So we're going to begin with learning about flipped learning and what it is so we can understand why video creation works and how that's going to help you in your classroom. So flipped learning is a type of blended learning strategy, so taking the best of technology in the classroom with that face-to-face interaction. And the content's going to be taught via an online platform, possibly YouTube or Edpuzzle, and students are going to view and interact with that content. The content can be viewed at home or in a classroom, and the teachers are then allowed to spend more of their classroom time creating experiences for students to deepen their content knowledge. So maybe they can do enrichment activities in the classroom more, or you have more time to pull those small groups. So video creation sounds like it's a lot of work, and it honestly is. It's a bit of a daunting task. I know when I first started, I was a little bit nervous about it. So why should teachers try this method of teaching? Well, there's been numerous benefits in my classroom for flipped learning, but the best benefits is my student engagement has gone way up from this type of teaching. So we've all seen this student, and we've all seen this student in our classroom. So we might have students that are bored because the lesson is going too slow for them, and they've already mastered the content. Or we might have a student that's just totally confused because the lesson is maybe going too fast for them, and they can't keep up. This was a big problem in my classroom, and I needed to change something because I saw some students were confused, some students were totally lost, and I wanted to increase my student engagement, especially because I had such a large class size this year. I had created videos previously for short instructions for my reading centers, and they had really helped my students become much more independent during these reading centers so that I had more time to work with like small guided reading groups, and there was less students coming up to me and asking me for directions and things like that. So I thought, well, if it works so well for my reading centers, why not try it with my math instruction as well? So I started making videos for my math instruction. I work with the Eureka Math program. So for the concept development part of our lessons, I would create a video for that. And then after my first week of piloting that, my students fell in love with it, and my engagement went way up. I asked my students to take a survey for me to explain their thoughts on these videos as well, and they had some really great things to say. And you can also follow this link right here, and you'll be able to see all of their responses as well. So some of them said, I like live math lessons because my class can help me if I'm having a hard time. I feel like they help me more than just listening on the board, and the videos also help me because if I have homework, then I can go on YouTube and watch it again. I feel good because in the beginning of the school, we had no clue sometimes what to do, but now the math videos help me to find other ways to understand it. One of my favorites, it's great. I love having not to look on the board to learn stuff. I thought that was kind of funny. And I like them because if you don't get it, you can go back or pause so you can write notes. So these are all really great examples of why I did this flipped learning model, because they have more control over their learning and it's giving them more opportunities to view the lessons. I also surveyed my students, and I found that 84% of my students prefer these videos over traditional teaching methods. And I explained traditional teaching methods to them as me standing up in front of the board and just teaching a math lesson. So 84% of my students preferred me making a video over that. And then what really surprised me is that 88% of my students believe they're learning more this way through the videos than they would with me just being up in front of the classroom, which was a really staggering amount to me. Then 64% of my students said that they would like more teachers to use these videos for instruction, and they said that they're really cool and they helped them out a lot. And even the parents agreed that this was something that was really helpful for them as well as their students. I also asked my students to tell me how this has changed the way that they have learned in my classroom. And they said it's changed because if you need help, you can go back in the video, or if you already know the problem, you can go forward. So again, giving them that control in the classroom. Also, it has changed the way I learn because with videos, I'm more focused, and if I'm behind and don't understand something, I can just go back in the video and watch it again. So again, just getting that control and that focus. So those are the benefits of flipped learning in my classroom. So what about your classroom? So students can have more control over their learning, and I think this is really important because they can rewind you, they can pause you, they can even put you in slow motion, which is something obviously that unfortunately cannot happen when I'm teaching somebody face to face. And I think that's what's is one of my students' favorite features of this. Then the lessons are really easily accessible for all the students. So I have a couple of students in my class that are chronically absent. So having them be able to easily just go back and view the lessons makes it easier to catch them up. And then for reviewing purposes, it's really great because like most recently we had to review decimals in class. So I could have them go back, watch the videos on decimals, and they can get a quick refresh on how to maybe multiply decimals or divide decimals to help them out with their current lessons, just in case they did forget. This also creates a much more efficient use of class time. Depending on how you want to use the flipped learning, you could either have the students view the content outside of class, and that could leave more time for enrichment activities or project-based learning opportunities in your classroom, or you could just do more small group time as students are watching the videos. Then you can also track your student progress if that is used in class. So for example, I will actually have the students watch the videos in class, and then as they're watching the videos, I walk around the class and I can see, okay, this kid didn't really do what they're supposed to do for this problem, so I can stop them and show them how to do it. And it's just a little bit easier, at least for me, to manage my classroom than it would be if I was like up in front teaching the classroom. And also, again, there's that higher student engagement, and especially because kids love YouTube, as we all probably know, and according to them, I'm kind of like YouTube famous. So they like to call me that all the time. And there has to be some drawbacks, of course, so nothing is perfect. But the first drawback to this is that digital divide. So that's where students are not having that access to technology, or maybe that they don't have that access to internet at home. But how I dealt with this is I just have my videos in class instead. So usually flip learning will work where you have the students view the videos at home, but I actually just have them view them in the classroom, and then sometimes they view them at home. But this has really helped just them in class be able to make sure that everybody has access to that content, and then they can learn the lesson at their own pace, they complete the math classwork, and then they can move on to different activities that I have set up for the day. And again, this is all done at their own pace and with me walking around and helping as needed. If you're working in maybe a higher grade level like high school or something like that, maybe you could have the students view the content at home instead because they probably have more access to that technology. But for the younger grades, I think it would be easier just to have them view it in the classroom. There could be a potential of lack of face-to-face content or interaction. So you want to make sure that just because you are using flipped learning, that you're still making sure to talk with kids face-to-face, teaching them face-to-face, because this is like a blended learning model. So that means that it's just meant to be a tool to enhance your lessons. So you can still do small groups or even just do a whole group lesson still that is face-to-face. This doesn't have to be the end-all be-all of your lessons. Then time is probably the biggest fear of this model. So yes, the videos can be a little bit difficult to create at first, and it does take some time. I take usually about 20 to 30 minutes to make my videos, and that usually takes up about my plan periods. But if you think about it, these videos are going to be watched over and over and over again. So it's definitely worth the time that you are putting in, and I'm actually going to show you on my YouTube dashboard later what I mean by this. So I hope by now that we have a basic understanding of flipped learning. So we're going to dive in and talk about how to make your own videos. And does anybody have any questions up until this point about flipped learning or anything like that? No? Okay. So Your videos can then be created with 6 easy steps. So for your first step, you're going to want to pick a lesson that you want to teach. It doesn't have to be math. It could be science, social studies, language arts, anything that you want. And then after that, you're going to want to review what you want to say. So what I will sometimes do is I'll create a script for what I want to say, or at least jot down some like talking notes to help me out with that. Just to make sure that I am prepared. After that, you're going to want to pick a video recording platform like Screencastify or WebCamera.io, and then you'll want to decide how you want to upload your videos. So maybe you'll just put them on Google Drive or YouTube. It's up to you, and I'll have some resources later on for this. And then you're going to want to record your video. Before you officially record your video for your lesson, it's a good idea to create a test video just to make sure that your video is uploading correctly, that there's no audio or visual errors, things like that. And then when you're recording the video, what really helps is pretend like you're teaching to your classroom, because it's really easy to pretend like you're just talking to a computer, and then you kind of forget that this is also going to be rolled out to your students. So you can make jokes, interact with the kids, ask questions throughout it, and don't be shy in front of the camera, and don't worry about making mistakes, because as teachers, we make mistakes, and that's fine. And it does, just because you're making a video doesn't mean it has to be perfect. You can make mistakes, and that's fine. After you finish recording your video, you're going to want to then upload that and share it with your class and decide if they're going to be watching that at home or watching that at school. So if you would like to see some examples of my videos, I have a link right here to my channel, and you can see the videos that I have created so far for my math instruction, and you can kind of see how I paste my videos, how I set up my backgrounds, and different things like that. And then of course, if you have any questions after this video, you can always email me or contact me if you would like further information. So you know the steps now to creating your videos, but what kind of videos can you create? Like what kind of lessons can you create? Well, there's a lot of different options. It doesn't just have to be math. You can create instructions for centers, so those small 3-minute videos. You can make a smaller video on a math concept that you know your students are going to need refreshers on throughout the year, like long division or multi-digit multiplication maybe. You can read a story and ask questions throughout it that they'll have to stop and answer. You can pick a lesson that you'd love to teach but don't have the time for. Like for example, I love to teach science, but unfortunately I don't always have the time for that. So you could always do a science lesson. And then writing can sometimes take a long time to create those writing samples. So what I'll do is I'll create a video for my writing samples and showing the students how I write them, but I'll crop out different parts so it doesn't take as long as it would with me writing out my entire writing sample on like a board or a piece of chart paper. And of course, there's many other options, but that's just a couple of quick ways to get you started. You have the steps, you have some possible plans, but you'll want to still make the most out of your videos. So first, you want to make sure that you're teaching students how to watch the videos. So when I first started, I wanted to make sure I laid down some ground rules for them, like don't fast forward all the way to the end as soon as you start watching, making sure that they take notes, and then you want to make sure that you're creating those moments of interaction, like asking them questions throughout it, or even just popping jokes, just to keep them engaged with you on the screen. You're going to want to watch out for lengthy videos, so make sure that your videos don't go over like 20-25 minutes, because while the videos are engaging, past that length can be still a little bit tiresome for the kids. Again, don't worry about perfection. Make sure that you're still available for that face-to-face teaching. So if a student just looks like they're really lost and confused while watching the video, it's totally fine to just pull them aside and continue that lesson with them in a small group or one-to-one session. And right here, I have a flipped learning workflow. So you'll want to figure out what kind of video capture hardware you want to use. So like I'll use a webcam with my laptop computer at the school. I'll use Screencastify to capture my videos, and then I'll put them on YouTube. You can make it interactive, like putting it on an Edpuzzle, and they can then answer questions throughout it. And then you just need to share it with your class. So I usually do that via Google Classroom, but you can always just send them like the YouTube link or the video link, however you have that. So I have some video, or I have some resources that you can use for your video creation, your uploading, and for platforms. And I also have a playlist over here with just some additional information on flipped learning. So, and then of course, if you would like any further information about how to use these individual products or how to use their individual features, please feel free to reach out. So, of course, you're going to need some sort of video hardware, so a dot cam, webcam, or any other type of camera. Then there's Screencastify and Web Camera IO, which you can use to record your videos. WeVideo will allow you to edit your video, so if you want to get a little bit more advanced with it. And then the link at the bottom of this page has some other recording softwares that you could possibly use if you don't like either of those. For uploading, I usually just keep to YouTube and Google Drive, and then my platforms can be Google Classroom, Edpuzzle, or YouTube. So really quick, I'm going to give you guys a quick tutorial on Screencastify if you've never used that before. So for Screencastify, you'll want to go to the Screencastify website. You'll just click Add to Chrome, and again, it is free, but you can only record up to 10 minutes. After that, you'll have to get a premium account if you want longer videos. But for now, you can just add it like this. And then when you are ready to record your videos, you'll want to make sure you press the Screencastify link that will pop up in your toolbar. And then in here, it's going to show you, you can choose your microphones, your cameras through these drop-down menus. It'll give you options for a countdown. And then you're going to want to decide if you want to just record with your webcam, so just showing your face, your desktop, so just showing your entire desktop and what you're doing, or just one single browser tab. And then you'll press record. It'll give you a countdown, 3, 2, 1, and then you start, and then you'll press stop when you're done. So very user-friendly. After you're done recording, what's going to happen is that you'll see your recordings. You can click on them, or it'll just pop up to the screen with the recording that you just finished. And then after that, you'll get some sort of page that will look like this. So this is an example of a lesson that I created. So you can change titles up here. You can download your videos. So if your internet connection isn't the greatest, you can always use that instead. You can share your videos, and this is how I get my videos on YouTube. So I can either share it on Google Drive or on YouTube. I use YouTube just because it takes up a lot less space on my Google Drive. And then for your channel, so you just have to click Add Channel. And technically, everybody has a YouTube channel because you just need to use your Gmail account on YouTube, and that creates your YouTube accounts. And then you would just have to click on Add Channel. It'll take you to the sign in, and then you could just start uploading. So it's very simple again. And then you'll just click Uploads. Usually, upload doesn't take very long at all, and you'll see how it uploads here. After that is done, then you'll just click on Copy Link, and then you can easily just copy the link to your Google Classroom page or wherever you need to share it. And you could already see how quickly it uploads. When you do get onto YouTube, you'll then be able to see your YouTube dashboard. So it looks something like this. And I can actually see a lot of important information about my YouTube channel. So I can see my subscribers, I can see my watch time. And this is probably the most interesting part to me because, yes, I take 20 to 30 minutes to create all my videos, but I have 1.8K in watch time already. So it definitely seems like it's worth my time when I have this much watch time for my students. But then back to the video tab. So I can see, okay, so I can already see this video that is being uploaded. I can edit the title. I can make it, I can get a shareable link. So I have a couple of options, and it's all very user-friendly on here. If I want to just go directly to my video, I can click on this. And then if you want to make your videos public, private, or unlisted, you can easily just do that there. So very user-friendly. And if you have any other questions about the YouTube platform, I can help you with that. And then finally, for the YouTube channel end of this, so what it'll actually look like for your class is you will have a YouTube channel that'll look like this. I added a little banner, but you can keep it very simple as well. So everything will look like this. And then you can have playlists for all of your content. So that's just a quick little tutorial on how to use this video recording platform. There are, of course, other options as well, but that's probably the easiest one, at least for me, to get started with. So for this PD, I hope you're able to learn a lot about flipped learning, video creation, and you might be even able to start this in your own classroom. And for our evaluation, I want to try something different if you're comfortable with it. So if you are following along in the Google Slides, if you could just follow this link, this is going to take you to the Google Form evaluation for this lesson. And in that, what I have is, in this, I have a instruction video on how to create a Screencastify video. And if you feel comfortable with this, you can actually create a Screencastify video to answer my 3 evaluation questions. If you don't feel comfortable with this, you don't have to, but I just thought it might be a fun way to do an evaluation. And then when you're done with your Screencastify video and it's been uploaded onto this platform, you just have to click on copy link, and then you'll just copy that into here like so, and then you'll be set. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, that is totally fine, but you can just answer the questions, and then if you have any comments or feedback, that would be greatly appreciated. So I'm going to open up the session now for any questions you might have. And thank you so much for attending, and I really hope you enjoyed this presentation.
Thank you so much, Heather.
Yeah,
that was
thank
really interesting. You packed a lot of information in. We have about 2 minutes for questions.
I do have a question. I think you said that you do a, first of all, thank you. This was really informative and really interesting.
Thank you.
I think you said do you create a script for yourself when you?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about how you prepare, your thought process, how you do the scripting. How do you get?
So with the Eureka Math program, they actually come with a script in our teacher manuals. So
nice.
It's not me totally coming up with a script on my own, but I come up with a lot of like talking points based off of that script. So that really helps me with my script. But if I'm doing like a literacy video for like centers, I might come up with like what's the most important information my kids need to know for this, and I'll just come up with like talking points for that, just so I can make sure I kind of keep myself organized, or I'll like end up rambling through my videos.
Yeah, that seems to me a challenge. So yeah, thank you. It's helpful.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much, Heather.
All right,
we really
thank you so much.
this overview. And I encourage everyone, please share some feedback with Heather, and we'll share a link out to her presentation with everybody's presentation, so that you can take a look at it at your leisure.
All right, thank you. And then I will share the link for the evaluation as well in the chat. So if you don't have the slides yet, you can go to the Google form just through that link.
Super.
All right, well, thank you so much, everyone, for viewing my presentation. I hope you enjoyed.
We did. Thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you could unshare your screen.
Oh, sure, sorry.
Thank you.
There you go.
And next up, we have Jamie.
Hi.
Hi, Jamie. So just before we get going, we have new people joining us. So I just want to welcome everybody to our Spring PD Showcase from National Louis University. These are our wonderful instructional technology coach students that have prepared PD to share with you. And now next up we have Jamie. And Jamie, if you could please just introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Jamie Janata. I am a high school Spanish teacher. I've been teaching for about 8 years. This is my second master's degree. My first one is in curriculum instruction and assessment, and I will be finishing up with my instructional technology master's degree next term. So woohoo, only a few more months. I'll be done in June. Okay, can I get started, Dr. Angela? Yes,
Yes,
okay.
absolutely. If you would share your screen, thank you so much.
All right. I'm also pointing out in the chat my, yes, world languages. So yes, I'm going to send you guys my actual website that we're going to be working on. I think it'll be easier for everyone. I will share my screen, but I do think it'll be easier for everyone to view it on their own screen as well. All right. Can everybody see? I believe so. Okay. Whoops, sorry, technical issue on my end here. Okay, so here we go. My PD session is on Edulastic, and I also threw in a little tidbit about escape rooms as well. So my overview is basically saying how technology changes so frequently, and it's constantly evolving. And so as time consuming as it can be to keep up with it, one of these resources, I feel like Edulastic is something, as well as escape rooms, to be honest, is something that will be able to continue with the times, and it's so useful that it's going to be helpful in your classroom, whether something new arrives or not. My objectives for this lesson are to be able to implement Edulastic in your classroom, to have a better understanding of Edulastic to help engage your learners, as well as using Edulastic as a formative assessment to collect your data. All right, the standards that I chose for this are the facilitator and an analyst, which I have them linked up there also if you would like to take a look at those. And I think with that, we will get started. So if everybody can click on the Edulastic tab at the top of their screen. And what I thought we would originally do is I planned originally to break into groups to do this breakout room, but I actually think we'll stay as a whole group. And that way we can actually communicate with one another. And if anybody has questions or anything like that, we can work through it together. So the first thing, Edulastic is a website. So you're going to need to go ahead. I linked it right here on the page. If you guys, everybody could just open it up, you're going to need it as a reference guide. You don't have to do anything with it yet. That's all throughout the escape room. But if you could just click on it so you have that open, that would be awesome.
So Jamie, just to clarify, should we go to Edulastic?
Yes, please click on that link on the website.
Okay, and could you just share with us what an escape room is?
Absolutely. I was actually just about to get there.
Oh, sorry. So
no, it's okay. I won't lie, I am nervous, so I don't want to forget either. So in escape room, basically, you've probably heard of Breakout EDU or a breakout box where you literally have a physical box with locks on it, and you put clues around your classroom for your students to find the clue, solve the clue, and it opens the lock until you get all the way through all the locks to open the actual box. This is a virtual one. To be honest, it's a lot less prep work. And you can do it from anywhere with your students, which makes, I think, makes it a lot easier to be able to like create it at home. And then each class period, you're not running around resetting up clues and relocking the box and everything else. Everything is right on their computer screen. You can also do a blended escape room where you do some clues virtually, and then you could do a couple of clues throughout the classroom as well. If you did, like, I do think it'd be nice maybe to get your kids up and moving a little bit here and there. So there's different options. There are some different platforms. I know if you go to Breakout EDU, you can purchase some escape rooms and things like that, and you can also design for them if you're really good at it. I won't lie, I used Google Forms. They worked perfectly. It was really simple to create, and I think Google Forms is a great way to do it because it's a free platform and it works well with Google Classroom and everything else that we already usually use in our classrooms. So that's a little bit about a breakout room, and I will get to how to help create them a little bit later. But for this escape room, I decided to do Edulastic, which is a website, and we will get into that. So usually with an escape room, you start with a story. You want your kids to buy into what they're trying to unlock. So since you are all teachers, this is a story I had come up with. Hopefully it's somewhat interesting. So I said, Mary's a high school teacher. She's a hard time keeping her students interested and engaged throughout her lessons. She is old school and decided she needed to try something new. So Mary went to her instructional technology coach for some advice. Her coach gave her this box and said, this is the key to engaging your students. Open it and watch it solve all of your problems. This is how Mary's journey began. Answer the questions below to get the 5 keys needed to open the box. Okay, so just an FYI, all of the answers are in uppercase. That's, I feel like that's an important FYI. If you do not put them in uppercase or caps lock, then your answers will just keep coming up as wrong. The other thing I'm going to tell you as you go, so every question is puzzles, and the key to the question is the answer. So I said, like for the first one, it says 4-letter lock. So go to edulastic.com and blank. So the answer is what you should do, the first thing you're going to do when you get there. These are simple questions. For your classroom, you can make them as complicated as you want. The whole point of a breakout room is to work on the 4 C's. So you want your students to be creative, you want them to be collaborating, you want them to be thinking critically, and communicating. So the harder you make the puzzle, within reason, you don't want them to feel discouraged, but within reason, you want them to be really having to think to solve it. That was not my purpose of today. I wanted you guys to get a feel of the website, and I wanted you to get a feel for how a breakout room can work. So do not overthink these answers. They are very simple. So with that, you guys can go ahead and go work through the form. There are only 5 questions. And so the first one is going to be 4 letters long, and all of them should be titles or simple things on the website that you can find. So I will ask everybody to go ahead and get started. If you have any questions, please make sure you speak up, or if you can't find an answer, because you cannot move on if you don't figure out the answer. So please feel free to let me know if you're stuck.
Hey, Jamie, we can't see the website. Okay.
Is it not working?
We
Everybody
see
should
the
be
Zoom.
right. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, I'm sharing my.
No, not at
I
all.
was looking at something.
Okay, and I have to confess that I was stuck with the 4-letter lock. I've never done a virtual escape room before.
The first answer, would it be easier if I just went through and gave everybody the answers?
Well, Eddie's through the first lock.
Oh, good job, Eddie. Okay, so if everybody, sorry, I completely forgot you guys are on my screen as well. So if you go to Edulastic, the very first thing you're going to have to do is this button right up here.
Yeah. Oh, Heather, Gustavo, Megan, they've all got it.
Good work, everybody. All right, so the first one you're going to do is, whoa, sorry. Let's try that one again. I forgot I'm on a Chromebook. I don't have a caps lock.
Yeah. Join. Oh,
Join.
makes sense.
Okay, so then you've got your first key done. So great job. You got 1 key to the box. Your second one is a 2-word lock. And instead of putting a word description here, I did the rocket ship instead. So go ahead and see if on the website you guys can figure out what the rocket ship would mean.
Let's see who's going to get it first.
And once you get it, I do have a little task.
So, Jamie, how do you program in the answers in your Google Forms?
So in Google Forms, there's actually a way, I believe I have it up here, although I think you might see answers if I do this. So when you go into Google Forms, if you go to the first question, I made sections so that it's not one long form, but that you can only do one question at a time. But in your questions, if you go to required, and then you go to the 3 little dots, you can add in a description, and then you can add in a response validation. The response validation is what you're going to do to make it so that they have to answer correctly to move on. So if, for instance, you, and then I put, so it says still locked. So if for some reason you answered the question and it's incorrect, the correct answer is not going to pop up for you. What's going to pop up is still locked, so that you can't move on. You can change this to be text. You can change this to be a number. It can contain it. It can be more than it. So you have a lot of leeway. You have a lot of leeway with what types of questions you can do. Plus, you can insert videos. You can insert images. There's definitely a lot of options, which makes this, I think, a lot of fun, and you could really be creative with it in your classroom. All right.
Thank you. Looks like Heather's got it.
All right. Heather, good work. The answer, I will let everybody know, is getting started. Don't forget to do it in caps lock. And then, since you already are at the getting started, there is a little, I got logged into my own, sorry. There is a little video that I will play for you.
Congratulations, you have created your Edulastic account. Now you have the option to go ahead and upload your students, or dive right into assessments. Let's start by exploring the assessment library. On the left-hand menu, select the library icon to enter into the assessment library. Here you have the option to search for an assessment by grade, narrow in on specific standards, and search for a particular term, among other options. Now you'll come back to a particular search. Save that search for later. One of the best things about Edulastic is that you can create your own assessment from scratch, or you can upload a paper-based test and give it online as a snap quiz. Let's get started on a new assessment. You'll automatically be taken to the question bank where you can choose from more than 40,000 questions. Let's filter and pick from some pre-made questions. You can preview any question to see how it looks to a student. Next, click Review to see the assessment you've created. If you want to add and author a new question, click on the icon at the top of the page and choose from over 30 tech-enhanced question types. Next, check for any final changes. Look at the contents of the assessment in the info panel for an overview of the assessment and click Publish. You can change the sharing level or add tags to your assessment on this page. Let's upload the student roster so we have someone to assign the assessment to. Click on the Manage Class icon and create a class by syncing with Google Classroom or creating the class from scratch. When you pick from scratch, you'll enter your class name, end date, grade, subject, and standard set. Save your class, and then you can begin to add students by Google username, Office 365 username, or straight up by their name. The students will automatically populate. Click Done. If you add students' Google IDs, they will not need a password. You can simply click Login with the Google button. Otherwise, print our login cards to hand to your students so they can log into their account. Let's head to the assessment page and assign that assessment you made. On the assessment page, click All Assessments. Hover over the assessment you just made and click Assign. Select who you'd like to assign the assessment to, whether you want the scores automatically or manually released, and then hit Assign. If you're a Google Classroom user, you can share the assessment in your Google Classroom feed, and students can access it from there. Congrats! The students can now begin working on the assessment. Now, the exciting part, the data and reports. On the assessment dashboard, click into the assessment to see students' results roll in. So what are you waiting for? It's time for you to get started. For more tutorial videos and support, visit our YouTube channel or the Teacher Training Hub on the Edulastic website.
All right. Hopefully that was helpful for everybody. Just gives you a quick little rundown of the actual website and the things you can do with it, which I know everybody is the biggest buzzwords around right now, I feel like, are personalized learning. And the one thing I really liked about this Edulastic was that you can cater it to everybody's, or you can cater to everybody's having their own time. So when you assign the assessment, each kid can finish in their own time. So nobody's being rushed or anything like that. And plus then you get their real data right back. So there's a lot of things that you can do with that. All right, so woohoo, another key down. All right, so the next puzzle is a 2-word lock, and the clue is attendance list.
Let's see who's going to get it first. And while we're waiting, could you tell us a little bit about how you use Edulastic with your world languages class? This is Spanish, right?
Yep. So there actually are some questions and assessments already pre-made for world languages, or you can make your own. So I've done both. And there's so many different things you can do with it. You can do drag and drop. So for my
Spanish 3s, they were learning all about different geography features. So I uploaded a map and put labels on the map, and they had to write in the correct name of the geographical feature that I had put on there, that labeled. So that was kind of nice, and it was a good test. They are assessed on that formally, so it was nice halfway through the chapter to get a feel for where all of those kids were individually on that. But you could do a lot. I mean, you could do anything in any class. There's graph, like math teachers can use it for graphs and different points. You could do different, anything drag and drop. You could do any type of formulas and things like that. You could do any type of information. There's a bunch of different question options. So I feel like it's a very wide, it's a very wide, has a lot of wide uses. Sorry, I can't spit it out. So I feel like it could be useful in any single classroom. You can also embed videos. So if you are an English teacher and you want to give a quick tutorial on maybe poetry or something like that, and then you could have them create their own or choose the different parts of speech or sentence structure or anything like that. There's a lot of availability and leeway in each content area, which is why I chose it for this specifically, actually.
Great, thank you.
All right, has anybody gotten the word lock?
Looks like Gustavo got it.
Woohoo, good job, Gustavo. Now, if I can remember what this one was, I think it's add class. Let's see if I'm right or wrong. Oh, phew, I do remember my answer. Okay, all right, good job, Gustavo. All right, so we have another key. This is a 6-letter lock. It says, in question bank, use the blank to narrow down your search of questions. And this is our final lock, I believe.
Heather's got it already.
Wow, Heather, you are on fire today. All right, so the answer is not filet. Do not type filet if you just saw me do that. There you go. Boom. All right, so you got it. Oh, there's one more question. I'm sorry, I was one wrong. One off. I thought that was funny. Okay, so this is a 5-number lock, and if you are in the assessments in library. And I will also say, obviously, this is not, a breakout room is not usually something I would do as a whole class. I would definitely break, in the very least, into groups. So this is not, if you did not get the answers before, if you were not the first one, then obviously that's nothing to panic about. I would never, it's not something you do to make kids have to straggle along. You want them to be solving it and thinking. I just, for sake of time today, decided to do it as a whole class so you could get the feel for it.
So this is a demonstration for us, but what kinds of questions might you put in your own digital escape room for your students?
You could do such a wide variety. And to be honest, Breakout EDU is a website. It's in one of my resources that I will show you guys in a few minutes, but they had tons of different example breakout boxes that you could do. I mean, it depends honestly a lot in whatever, I always think of math. If you wanted to do different equations and different things for your students to solve, the answer could be a simple answer to an equation. It could be like for me in Spanish, it could be a geographical feature, or it could be, a lot of teachers I know do different riddles and put puzzles together. Like, so I also know we learn about ancient civilizations in my classroom, so it'd be kind of really fun to do the old school math that they used to do and have them have to figure out what the numbers are in this certain pattern and things like that. So, but you really could open it up to anything. You could do, again, if I stuck with poetry or any definitions for English or history or dates for history, maybe anything like that, you really can make your puzzle for them to have to solve. All right, has anybody gotten the answer yet?
Great, thank you. I don't see anything in the chat.
All right, so the answer, if you went into the assessments, it's the number of assessments that they currently have, which is 21,049 that you could choose from. So that's how big of a library they already have for you, so that you could go narrow it down. So it's kind of nice if you don't have a lot of time, like most of us, I feel like, there's something you can already start with. Even if you took it and you can change the question, you could take it and add it to your own library and then change it. I think that's a great starting point. If you could look for an entire assessment, or you can build your own assessment. So if you wanted just like a specific topic, you could search the topic and then take any questions you liked and then alter them to make your own assessment. All right, so that was the end of my escape room. And then down here I have congratulations, you've officially opened the Mary's box. Wow, that was terrible, I'm sorry. So inside is the knowledge you helped Mary unlock so that Edulastic can be a useful tool in her classroom. So congratulations, Mary is now on her way to have an engaged, data-driven class. So at the end of the story, you want some sort of reward for your students to have unlocked. And so for this, I just said this was the tools obviously you need, but you can get creative with what type of reward or what you want inside the box. A couple of tips that I wrote down that were helpful for me as I was creating these. So tips for future use with Edulastic. Definitely upload your classes with Google Classroom. That is the easiest connection to do, because then you can just quickly assign right onto Google Classroom. I've already talked about this one, use your question bank as a starting point. Upload quizzes you already have. So that's another option, which is what I did with my map quiz. If you upload it as a PDF, then you can just add any types of questions you want instead of having to start over. Communicate your scores with parents, and so they know. If you're teaching younger students, I teach high school, so it's not as, I don't feel like I communicate weekly with all of my students' parents, only, but elementary, I feel like you communicate a lot more often. So make sure you're sharing those scores with standards so they know what to be working on. Obviously use your data to compare with your team or PLC to decide what areas need reteaching or possibly changing for future. And then use your data to allow your students to self-assess and make changes in their daily habits. That's a big one, I feel like, in high school and starting in junior high, is you want to make sure your students are aware, they're metacognitively aware of how they're doing in your classroom. So this is a great way because they can see right away, like, holy cow, I didn't know that and I need to practice, or, oh, I really have that one down, moving on to the next standard. Tips for the virtual breakout. Watch the YouTube videos about breakouts in the resources section, which I'll get to in a second. It shows you how very simply or simple it is to create the Google form for this. Brainstorm your puzzles ahead of time. That's definitely the hardest part of a breakout. And remember, mine were very, very, very simple. You definitely need to kick it up a notch for your students to get them thinking critically. Create a story. I talked about that too. You want to have some sort of pathway that your students are going down. And then incorporate pictures and videos into your Google form. It just makes it way more fun, I felt like. Okay, I'm going to skip my evaluation real quick and go to resources. So right here, the resources I use to create these, and the ones I think are super helpful. The Black Google form, different reviews, and this YouTube channel of Edulastic has like tons of information and tips and tricks and different things you can use with Edulastic. All right, so my last thing is just my evaluation of my PD. If you will take a quick minute to go ahead and fill that out. I appreciate any feedback. And then I will open it up. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Sorry, Jamie, I was a little late to the party. So for Edulastic, I see that there is the full platform free, or what, I guess what does the paid version get you?
To be honest, I don't know because I have not used the paid version. I have stuck with the free version and it works just fine.
Awesome, I like free.
Yeah, right? Who doesn't like free? Especially as teachers, we can't be affording to pay for all this crazy stuff. But yeah, the free version worked just fine with me or for me. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure the paid version could get you some more, which I can look into it and definitely let you know also what the paid version can do.
It seems like you can really do a lot with the free version, so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And do you have you explored the virtual escape rooms, Jamie?
I have explored them a lot. I have not done one with my students. This is actually my first escape room that I have ever really created.
Good job.
Thank you. I've done the real breakouts and I've seen them done, and I just decided that I thought a virtual breakout room would be a lot less running around on my part and would be kind of a fun way to incorporate some professional development. So I will definitely, it is in the plan to do it in my classroom, but it has not happened yet.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of fun. Any other questions for Jamie? Well, thank you, Jamie. That was a really interesting. Eddie is saying that was awesome, Jamie. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Eddie. And thank you all. I know it's Saturday and I'm sure it's the start of all of your spring breaks. So thank you so much. I really appreciate letting me get my practice in.
Yeah, thank you. That was very, very good. Thanks so much, Jamie.
Thank you.
Now we're going to move on to Gustavo.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Gustavo. So just a reminder for those that have joined us recently that this is our Spring PD Jam, and it's sponsored by National Louis University and the Learning Technologies Program, and our wonderful presenters are instructional coach candidates in our Learning Technologies Learning Sciences program. So Gustavo, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, so I'm Gustavo Rodriguez. Currently, I'm teaching 5th grade dual language. This is my 4th year teaching. I've had a wide range of experiences. I've taught at the 8th grade level with computers in a one-to-one setting. I've had ELL classrooms at the 2nd grade setting at one-to-one. And then I've also had 2nd grade where we weren't one-to-one. And I've had 4th grade where we were not one-to-one, and currently we are not one-to-one. But I am excited to announce that we will be moving to that type of setting next year. We just got that announcement yesterday. So
wonderful. And just a quick explanation. What does one-to-one mean?
So one-to-one would mean that each student gets their own device. Currently, I know throughout my experiences, I've had classrooms where all the students had a device at every single day. It wasn't a problem to get a device for them. But I know I'm excited to move towards that route where everybody is able to have a device, because I know that that was a very big struggle for me this year, just trying to get enough devices for everybody to try and do an online assessment.
Super.
Which is what I'll talk about today.
Okay, great. We'll take it away.
All right, so I'm going to be sharing my screen with all of you. I also in the chat shared my presentation if you would like to follow along. I would recommend opening up that presentation just because there are links that will be following through that. So let me go ahead and pull this up. Sorry, I have two monitors going on right now, so there was a little confusion on the tech side. All right, so looking at my presentation, I will be talking about digital tools for assessment and engagement today, and these are kind of my personal favorites when it came to digital tools that we can be using. So a little bit about me. I know that we discussed that. I've had experiences in the one-to-one classrooms where all the students have a device. I do like to incorporate technology into my teaching, but obviously is it is allowed. And this is my 4th year overall teaching. So before we get started, I want to try a new tool that I actually was looking at. I know last presentation, Jamie was very brave and she did her first escape room, and I thought, you know, maybe I would try a new tool as well. And so if everybody could click on the Poll Everywhere link. So this is a hyperlink going to the survey that we will be doing. So Poll Everywhere is one digital tool that I did stumble upon that is great for getting answers very quickly. Students can use desktops or even mobile devices. So I know that I've heard of this being used in high school. I've seen this in my own professional development, especially because when not everybody had a computer, everyone had a cell phone. So you were still able to participate. And what I liked about that is when people are answering, there is a nice graph that can be presented to the front of the class or the front of the room so that people can see the answers. So it is a very good visual display. So if everyone would please click on that link, what you will end up seeing is that questions will appear. It is only 4 questions, and this is just based on all of your prior experiences. So you guys will be answering the questions while I will actually be showing the results, which is fantastic because people are already answering. So as we are looking at the results, I can already see prior experiences. People are looking at all of the questions. So we're going to get started by looking at those results. So, and here's my tech issue. Well, the wonderful world of tech. Okay. So as we can see, people are starting to answer the questions on our Poll Everywhere. My first one was asking, well, how do you feel about your current formative and summative assessment practices? If you were saying at a 1, then you were saying you're not very confident with your current formative and summative assessments. If you were at a 5, you were saying you were pretty confident. And as I'm looking, it seems like it's pretty even across the board. I'm seeing that 5 people have answered, and it seems like, yeah, it's pretty dispersed. Okay, so we have a good range of how people are feeling about their current assessments. So the next question, if we go on to the next question, it says, have you used digital tools to assess your students before? Yes or no. And the nice thing that I like about this is I did set it as anonymous, so people do not know who is answering what. It lets people feel comfortable about it and make sure that they're not being judged. But if you do want to use this tool as something to see how people are feeling specifically in your classroom, then this is also a great tool to use. And I believe I'm going through some tech issues. I apologize because it should be going on to the next question, and it is not. And there we go. Okay. Well, I think I'll just move forward for time's sake, and I apologize to everybody listening. But my third question was asking if people were familiar with the digital tool quizzes, which is something that I will be talking about today. And I don't think that it will work out. We will see. Going to try it one more time. Well, I do have 3 responses.
Just click on, The prior
Let's see.
experiences. Yeah.
Prior experiences. Okay. So it looks like prior experiences, I had 2 people saying no when it came to assessing their students with digital tools. And then when it came to familiar with quizzes, thank you everybody for bearing with me. It looks like 4 of us said no to using quizzes. So I'm very excited about that because that'll be something that we will experience today. And my final question was, are you familiar with Class Dojo? And this is the engagement piece, and we're about half and half, so that's fantastic. Okay, so we will be learning a little bit about these things today. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with me during that. So I will be going back to the presentation. And so we are now going on to our learning objectives for the day. So I did want to do that just to see, engage the room, see how everybody was feeling. So my learning objectives today, because we are looking at digital tools for assessment and engagement, these are taken from the ISTE standards. So my objectives for you would be that all of you attending will be able to use digital tools to create formative and summative assessments. You will all be able to give timely feedback with the assistance of digital tools, and you will be able to use technology to adapt and to personalize the learning experience to accommodate your learners. And for those who would like more information, I do have the ISTE standards specifically here, and there is a link right here to the ISTE standards that I am referring to, if that's something that you would like to explore. So for those who are not familiar with formative and summative assessments, a formative assessment is going to be quizzes or tests or some type of evaluation to see how someone is learning throughout the course. And I also have my reference here, and here is a website about more information. And for summative assessment as well, quizzes and tests that evaluate how much someone has learned throughout the course. So formative is kind of during the process, summative is after the fact that you have been learning. And once again, here is some additional information for those who are interested. I know that I put it in there. It went into a little bit more detail, formative versus summative assessment for those who may need a little bit more information. So quizzes, I'm excited to actually hear that not many of you are familiar with it. This one is something that I learned last summer and I have been using throughout the school year, and my kids loved it. If for those of you who are familiar with the digital tool Kahoot, which is where teachers are able to present questions at the front of the class, and then students are able to answer on their own devices. Something that I did not like about Kahoot is that the answers were not on the students' screens. It was frustrating. I had kids sitting in the back of the room saying, I can't read the answers in the front. And so it was getting a little challenging on that aspect because Kahoot will just give you 4 buttons and 4 colors. Quizzes, on the other hand, is extremely similar to that, except the answers will come up on the students' individual screens. This was my workaround for when I did not have a one-to-one classroom. I was able to pair up students. I was able to put them in small groups because then I could have group 1 all on one device and I can track their answers based on using this digital tool. So this is a wonderful tool because I can use it as on desktops or mobile devices. I can create quizzes from scratch, or they do have a pre-made library of quizzes already made. You can take single questions from those quizzes, or you can copy the entire thing. Very customizable, very easy to use. There is a limit in the sense of this only will allow multiple choice or multiple select type of questions. So I do realize that that is a barrier, but it's also a good thing for formative and summative because you can see, hey, did the student get the question right? Did they get it wrong? It's a very black and white type of answer. Data collection is in real time, which is fantastic. At the end, you will be able to see a report. You will be able to export it onto Google Sheets or Excel. So I am somebody who loves my personal time, and so the less time I have to spend grading, the better. And so this was actually a really good tool to use, and actually is very helpful. Now, for those who would like further information on quizzes, I did attach steps on how to make your own quizzes here. This is a separate presentation that does give you a step-by-step guide on how you are able to do this on your own. And so it is very broken down, makes it nice and easy. Creating a quiz, how can you create it? How do your answers come up? How can you add more questions? You can link standards to this, which is fantastic. So you have that support as well. Something I also like about quizzes is that you are able to shuffle the questions, so you do not have the kid sitting next to the other student who knows all the answers, because everyone will receive the same questions. However, the answers and the questions can be shuffled if you would like. Showing answers at the end will allow students to review their own answers as well, if you would like, and we'll go more into that as well. Now, something that's really nice about quizzes is that it gives the option of being live, or you can assign it for homework. So you can send it to the students so that they're working on your own, tell them when it's due, and you can record their responses that way. Or if you want to do it as a whole class and do it throughout a lesson, you may do that as well. And that is my popular choice because I see that the kids get very competitive, but it's also very, very engaging. It's in a positive way. So because there was unfamiliarity with it, I do want to try this out with you guys. So if you are looking at this presentation, I will invite you to click onto this link right here. What I'm going to do is I will be pulling this page up, and a game code, I will be giving that to you right now. Once again, any device will work if you go onto this link and join the quizzes, and I will give you the game code right now. What I'm going to do while I'm sharing the screen with you guys is actually show what I would see as the teacher. So because I'm the one administering this and I'm the one that's going to be doing this quiz with you guys, let me show you. So I have this linked up to my student account. I really hope you have brushed up on your fractions lately, because this is a very quick thing that I did with my students just to test it out, because we had been doing fractions for a long time. So we are doing a real life, are you smarter than a fifth grader? Because it seems like where we're at. So you can see that there are a lot of different things that you can choose. It is very customizable. You can show answers in the game. There is a leaderboard. If you would like to be more competitive with your students, if you feel like your students would not do well with that, saying, oh, so-and-so is beating me, then you can just shut that off. That is okay as well. You can set time limits to personal questions as well. There is a question timer. Once again, the shuffling music can be played along in the background. And something I thought was very interesting was there are memes involved. Memes are something very relevant to students right now. So as students are answering questions correctly, memes will come up. If they get it wrong, memes will come up as well. So it is kind of a lighthearted type of quiz, so it doesn't feel as serious, but we are still assessing our students' learning. So I'm going to host a game with you guys, and here is the code that I would like you to type in. When you are logging in, it will ask you to type a name. This is something where you can set expectations with your students, because you know you will always have that one who might type in something inappropriate. So thank you for not typing anything inappropriate. If that does come up, however, you are able to click on that person's name and remove them right away. So it's a very useful tool. It's a nice way to kick people out if they are not listening. And it's a good way to just set your expectations right from the beginning. So I think I just want to make sure everybody is in. I know we have a few people. I don't know if this might be it. I'll give about one more minute just in case. But I think that, there we go. Okay. So thank you, Dr. Angela. Thank you, Jill, Heather, Chris, and Eddie. And so as I was explaining before, this could be live, this could be a homework assignment. It is a very easy tool to manage to come up. I can have music in the background. Usually I will present this in the front. But when the kids are testing, sometimes I will hide this screen. I will let the music play over the speakers. The kids can hear that in the background, or they can hear it on their own personal devices. But I will show you why I hide the screen throughout. And the reason is because it will show each participant and the success rate of each participant as they are taking the quiz. So if it is wrong, it will show a red bar. If it is correct, it will show a green bar, and you can see the disparity in real time as the proctor of the test. So I'm going to get started. I'm sorry if you were not able to log in, but for time's sake, we're going to see how this goes. So I'm going to start it. You can hear a countdown going down on your device. And I have shuffled it. So if you need to turn down the music, you can turn down the music. I know that it is a little louder. I know I will turn it down for my sake. But as you can see, and as I was mentioning, you have your leaderboard. You can see who is being correct. So I'm going to let everybody try and brush up on their fraction knowledge. Let's see how you do. These were just a few questions that I had used on previous quizzes with my kids before. And so as you see, the students are progressing. I could project this in the front if I would like to. If I do project it in the front, sometimes I do put it anonymously. I have students put an anonymous name, and then you really can't tell who is getting questions wrong, who is getting them right. Or if you just want to hide it altogether, that's also something you can do. So as you are answering questions, if you get them right, you will see some memes popping up at the end of the questions. Very lighthearted. You can actually make your own memes, which is very innovative of quizzes, or you can use ones that have been pre-made. They are all appropriate, which is very good for educators. I have yet to run into a meme that was inappropriate. And so it is extremely customizable. It's really easy to use. It keeps the kids engaged. When they hear the charm sound when they get an answer right, I see that the kids do get very excited, or when they get it wrong, they're not really discouraged because that meme is kind of there to kind of boost them back up and say, it's okay, try again, we're just going to keep moving forward. So as you continue to get them wrong, you will see the bars getting higher, and if you continue to get them right, you will see them getting higher. At the top, it does tell you an accuracy of the overall class, which was a really nice thing to see. And so by having that bar there, that's actually really easy to see as the teacher. Hey, are my students understanding the concept? No, they're not understanding the concept. So I see that people are finishing up. I know I have a few. Sometimes I have run into issues where the kids are kicked out, but I have had instances where they are able to log right in while a game is going, and they were perfectly fine. So that was pretty nice to see. So it seems like right now everybody is finished. So once everybody is actually finished with the quiz, I can end the game, and you will see here is our little podium. Our podium comes up. Eddie, nice job. You were in second place. Heather is in third. And Chris, you were our first. He is our champion. So it is, and this is, I'm showing you the teacher screen as you guys have the student screen in front of you. But at this point, I would use this to review questions. This is great because it gives you a nice breakdown. Class accuracy was 90% for this. The toughest question, it already highlighted for us right away. The longest question, which one took the longest to answer, as well as interesting fact, they just throw that in there. The average time taken per question was 4 seconds for this instance. So I like to use this to review with my students. I know I'm going to move this back over here. I like to use this to review with my students because it does a nice little graph breakdown to see. I can see question 1, we had a little bit more trouble. Question 2, 100% rate. Same thing goes for many of the questions, but question 6 and 8, I had an 80% rate. It is also nice because I can break it down into questions specifically. I can go into it. I can project it at the front of the room. I can make it bigger so that everybody is able to read, and I'll minimize this so you guys can see. It is an easy way. I can hide the answer if I would like, if I want to review it as a class, or I can show it right from the beginning, and we can go through every single question one by one to review as a class. So that's something that's really interesting with quizzes. I know that that's something I really liked to do. And if you were looking earlier, I know that it also allowed us to go in and turn it into a spreadsheet. So if we really wanted to change this into a spreadsheet and get all of our answers on a spreadsheet, we were able to do that, save it as a file, and come back to it afterwards. So if this is a formative or a summative assessment, you don't have to worry about any of the grading. You can send this out to the students and look over the grades later on. So if you would exit out of that, and we can go back to the presentation. Thank you all for those who participated. Thank you for that, following along. So that was our Class Dojo activity. And so something else that I did want to go over was, I'm sorry, that was our quizzes activity. Something else that I did want to go over is our Class Dojo. Now, Class Dojo, the reason I'm bringing this up is though it is not for assessments, this is something that I used for engagement with my students. Even at the 5th grade level, I did not think it was going to be effective. However, it was extremely effective up to the 5th grade level, even for the kids who felt like they were too cool for it. So, I do have an introductory video here. I know for time's sake, I'm not going to play that video, but I know that you will be able to play that on your own time. But Class Dojo, to break it down, is a digital tool that is good for behavior management. Students are able to get positive or negative points on their personal little monster, just like the icon here. When you set up your class, you can import a Google Classroom. And you are able to get and set up your students. You are able to set them up individually, and you are also able to put them in groups. Now, the really nice thing is if one student is acting out, you are able to use it in a sense of you can give them negative points, and all of the behaviors are going to be customizable. So one thing that I have in my classroom is not prepared. If a student comes into class and they're not prepared for class, for example, they're missing their homework, they forgot something, something along those lines, I can dock them one of these virtual dojo points. However, if they're doing something great, I'm able to give them positive points. And the nice thing is that you can project this in the front of the classroom. The teacher view will have little squares for every single student. They can click on the student, and right there, it just gives you the option. Yes, I want to give them a point. No, I don't want to give them a point, depending on how you've set it up. So it's actually very nice. I know that it works very well with smart boards. If you have nothing going on that you want to project to the front, a smart board is an excellent way to use this app because I've had teachers say, well, I have students go up and they can click and add their own points if they're doing something well, and the kids do take pride in that. Or if you hide it and have it in the background, but your computer is still hooked up, the students can hear the sound over the speakers. And so if they hear the sound over the speakers, there is a significant sound for a positive point, and there is a kind of harsher sound for the negative points. But I found out that even just by playing the sounds and the kids have no idea who got a point, who lost a point, it really gets them back into shape, and they kind of go, oh, maybe I was the one who lost a point. Well, I don't want to lose a point. So everybody kind of just gets right back into it. So it's a really great tool to use. It's also really good for data collection for those who like to do data collection when it comes to behaviors, time off task, time on task. It's a very useful tool for that. And like I was saying before, it is able to be used on computers, cell phones, tablets. So I've seen teachers have it up on their phones. I personally have it on my phone because I do not have a smart board in my class. So I can't do that option in my class. And so when I walk around, my computer is docked to the system. And so even when I add points on my phone, it will go over to the speakers on the computer that's already docked, and it'll make the noise. So it is in real time. All the devices are connected together. So it's really nice to see that that works out.
Gustavo,
Yes.
Could you just tell us a little bit more about the sound and what happens in your classroom?
Yes. So with the sound, when it comes to the classroom, and I do have a dock, I am limited to having my dock in the classroom. And so I can even log on to my Class Dojo so you guys can actually take a look. And so for Class Dojo, you will, and I did include a link there where the Class Dojo is, where you are able to log in as a teacher or whoever it is that you would like to log in as. And there we go. So I will log into my Class Dojo so that you guys are able to take a look. Now, the sound itself, when you click onto it, now I know I'm using headphones, so it may not work beautifully, but as you can see, I actually am linked to other classes as well. It's nice because I can go into the other classes, like this is one of my coworkers, I can go in and give her students points if I really wanted to. And so we do trade students a lot, so this is why we decided to share students. But when I go into mine, I have all of my students right here. And my students, there are a few different tools. There are portfolios that you can go into for the students, for each student. There is a class story, so it kind of has a news feed where you can share and parents are able to see. So it's kind of like a Facebook type of setting where you're able to post and parents are able to like and comment on those things. or you can have personal messages as well between parents. So this is a great tool for behavior management, keeping them engaged throughout the class, as well as home communication. I know that these are blocking, but there's also some tools down here. There's a timer. You can randomize. You can select multiple students and give them behavior. So for example, here's what I was talking about. I can give them points based on what they're doing. Respect was a big thing for my class, so being a role model gives you the most points out of a lot of them. But needs work, I also have things like this, like for the gym teacher, he can come in, forgot gym shoes, he can take points off for being not prepared, thinking like that. And so you can make them customizable to you. I know that last year, this is a different group of kids, but last year I did have more Spanish-speaking parents, and so I actually had the behaviors in Spanish so that parents knew when they logged in, hey, why did my student do this? Or, okay, now I know why they lost points or why they gained points. Inviting parents is very easy. There is a toolkit here. There is a group maker. There's music in the background. So lots of different tools are also embedded within this program as well. So it's really good for student engagement. I know I play music in the background sometimes, timers, things like that. And so very simple things, very easy to use tools, not very difficult to understand. And it's actually it's pretty seamless when it comes to being able to implement it into the classroom. And I know for time's sake, I am running over time. I apologize.
We just want to know what happens when you award points and the sound goes off.
Oh,
what your students do.
Oh, yeah. So when I do this, and I know they'll hear, I'm really hoping that this go. Let's see. Okay. So because he's been doing his work, I can give him points right now. So participating, I don't know if you were able to hear that little charm. So if that charm goes off, the kids usually hear that and they will readjust themselves because they go, oh, that's a positive point. I know my students as well. I have them in groups to keep each other accountable. And so we just switched seats, so they had different groups. So my table 3 was the one on top of it yesterday, so they got points, but they're also able to award multiple at the same time. So you can have group points or you can have individual points based on how it works. Now, I can also have things like I have a student, unfortunately, he was not prepared for class or he was off task, which he was. I should have taken this point off yesterday, so I can do this right now. So they would hear that negative sound. And so I'm not sure if that went through very loud, but that sound usually goes off, and when the students hear that, that's kind of their key or their signal to go, oh, somebody isn't following directions. I need to readjust my behavior. And so that didn't happen automatically because the kids didn't recognize that sound before, but it is part of my tips for implementation afterwards, which I was going to say is consistency. So that's something that I would recommend if using that digital tool specifically. I would say consistency is key, because if you are not using it in a consistent manner, then kids are going to say, well, it doesn't matter, it's just a dojo point. But if it actually holds some value, then the kids will tend to value it just as much as you do. I do have positive incentives. I say when the kids have a certain amount of points, then yes, they are able to get an extra recess. If you as a class are able to get the so-and-so amount of points, then this is what we'll learn. So the kids kind of strive for that. Putting them in groups also helps hold them accountable. I had one student who would also not pay attention and thought it was funny to lose points. So I would say, oh, table number 1, you're awesome. Table number 2, oh, not everyone's engaged. Sorry. Table 3, you win. Table 4, you win. Cool. We're moving forward. And those kids were the ones calling him out. The people at his table called him out. And so eventually he was the one who started calling everybody else out and saying, no, we're going to lose a point. So I saw that it was a very effective tool, especially using them in groups to get them that accountability factor with their peers. But overall engagement throughout the class as well, when kids are participating, giving them points. When kids are doing something right around other classrooms, giving them points. If students are not prepared or being disrespectful to other teachers or students, taking away points. So they see that it kind of follows them wherever they go. And so that accountability factor really does help with the students in that aspect. As I mentioned before, you can change the settings to your personal classroom. That is for the quizzes, that is for the class dojo. You can it is so customizable that you can do whatever you need to for your personal class. So my tip for all of you who may be unfamiliar would be to start small. Choose one of these tools. Quizzes, I think, would go pretty well with a lot of you, especially if you have those students and you just want to do a quick check with them. I think it's a very easy tool to put together a quiz. It's a very easy thing to assign for homework if you don't have time to do the live one in your class, or you do not have the devices to do the live in your class. You can always send it home and have students work on it still in that aspect, in that environment. And so that, I know I was rushing towards the end a little bit. I do have a reflection survey. It is a Google survey, if you would all be so kind as to fill that out. But the questions, I did have them previewed right here as well. The questions I had were, what do you feel technology can do to help accommodate your classroom learners? How do you feel that quizzes can help you create a more engaging, formative, or summative assessment? How can you use the data collected after the quizzes assessment to adapt your future instruction? And how can ClassDojo help address the needs of your students during a lesson? And so they are pretty open-ended questions, but I know that it is a nice practice to be reflective of what we are currently doing and trying to see, well, how can I accommodate these new digital tools into my current practice? And so the reflection will allow you to reflect on that. And so if you do have any further questions about these tools, I know that the amount of time we had is not too much time to go into too much detail, but if anybody does have any further questions, feel free to email me. My email is there. And yes, does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Gustavo. That was really interesting. I've never used quiz before. So Eddie is saying, really neat. Thanks, Gustavo.
Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting. And I love to hear the reaction of your students self-adjusting when they hear the sound of the ClassDojo, because you can hear it throughout the class, right?
Yeah, I have my computer connected to the class, to the dock, and so that hooks up to the speakers that are already in our classroom. And so when I have that, usually I'll leave the window for ClassDojo open. If the students can see, sometimes I will project it, sometimes I won't even project it, and they just hear the noise. And when they hear the noise, it's funny to see that my kids all of a sudden will, like, oh, they were talking, all of them all of a sudden grab their stuff, they do what they need to do. Go, well, we don't know who got the point, or we don't know who lost the point. But if I do put it at the front of the classroom, especially if there is a student who may not be on task or doing what I need to, I will sometimes purposely put it in the front and say, you know, the negative behavior comes up, and when that happens, the student's name does come at the bottom of the screen on ClassDojo, so that person knows, oh, I need to get back on. And so it is like a little call out to them saying, hey, without me having to waste any energy in calling that student out and having that confrontation, all I have to do is click a button, that sound comes up, all the students always look up to see what happened. And so they see their name. If they see their name, then it's either a positive thing or a negative thing. If it's the negative points, well, they usually do a pretty good job of saying, okay, I know I need to stop. I'm going to get back onto what I need to do.
I wonder if there's a way to maybe add another, like a fake student, so that you could draw attention to, you know, there's somebody in the class,
mm-hmm.
but without calling out particular names.
Yes, and I've done that. I've had a dummy account.
Yeah.
I made a dummy student before, even just called them guest, because especially when I just have the sound playing and not the visual in front of the class, I'll have that dummy account. And if I need to see that my class needs to get back into shape, but I don't want to give anybody a point or take away a point from anybody, I'll usually click on that dummy account and they'll hear the sound, and that is usually enough to get them readjusted to it. So.
Okay. Any questions for Gustavo? Well, thank you very much. That was really interesting.
Thank you.
So at this point, we're going to take a short break and come back at 12, where we'll hear from Jeff about 3D printing. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you in a few minutes. You can just stay logged in and mute yourself and take the video off. Thank you. From National Louis University with our instructional technology coach candidates. So Jeff, would you like to take it away? Could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. I know some of you. I'm Jeff Tosh. This is my 14th year teaching. I teach in Evanston. I teach primarily engineering classes, civil engineering architecture class, and then I teach like a robotics type engineering class. I went to Purdue University for my undergrad, and also I got a master's from there in technology with a focus on mechanical engineering technology. And so excited to be working on this master's. All right, I'm going to share my screen now. All right, could you guys see my screen?
Yep, and what are you going to be talking to us about today?
I'm going to be talking about 3D printing in every classroom. And so when I start this off, I would ask that you guys all go to this website, menti.com, and then you enter in this password 960289, and I'm going to ask you some questions just to start off to kind of get a sense of what you guys know about 3D printing and some other things. So if you could go to that website and enter that code, and then you could start by just simply what words come to mind when you hear the term 3D printing, and we'll see what you guys come up with, and it'll kind of generate a word cloud as we go through this. So I'll give you guys all a second to go to the website, but just a little bit about 3D printing for myself. I've been using it in our classroom for about, I think the first time I used it was about 11 years ago. And it's really, you know, when it first came out, people thought, you know, oh, there's not going to be Amazon anymore. You're just going to, you know, get a file off the internet and you're going to be able to print it. And so people have kind of realized that that's really not what's going to happen. But there are definitely some great ways that you could use it to enhance your learning experiences in your classroom. And so we actually have 6 different 3D printers at our school. We have ones that are really big that are like $60,000, and we have ones that are small that are like $600, $700. All right, so we're getting some different words you kind of see, and a lot of those things are the preconceived notions that come with 3D printing, especially we see the expensive one, science, of course, design, creativity. But let's go to the next slide. So how familiar are you all with 3D printing? Somewhat. Mostly everyone has at least heard of it. That's good. And so has anyone actually used 3D printing in your classroom or profession before? And that's pretty standard. I think a lot of people kind of, when they think of it, they think it can only really be used in, you know, engineering type classes or other industrial type settings. And so the last thing I wanted to kind of get from you guys is why have you avoided using 3D printing in your classroom? And there's a sliding scale you kind of pick for each one, and it will, you know, you could either agree or disagree with each one of the statements. Oh, the slider's not working. Oh, there we go. All right, so you can see a lot of people, it's too expensive, or not familiar with it. It's kind of an overwhelming thing to think about, just getting a 3D printer for your classroom. So just to kind of give you guys a brief overview of some of the different things with 3D printers, how they work, and the different ones out there, I have a video for you all. It's only 2 minutes long, and we'll see how this broadcasts.
Technology is already changing the way we produce objects, from tools and toys to clothing and even body parts. 3D printing is part of a process known as additive manufacturing, where an object is created by adding material layer by layer. Additive manufacturing allows designers to create complex parts for machines, airplanes, and cars at a fraction of the cost and time of standard means like forging, molding, and sculpting. Now, smaller, consumer-friendly 3D printers are bringing additive manufacturing to homes and businesses. The first step in 3D printing is to create a blueprint of the object you want to print. You can use modeling software like Blender to create your own designs, or you can visit websites like Thingiverse or Shapeways to find objects other users have 3D modeled. Once you have a finished design, it's time to send it to the printer. Some printers, like the MakerBot Replicator 2, have renewable bioplastic spooled in the back of the device, almost like a string. When the printer receives the data, it pulls the material through a tube, melts it, and deposits it to the plate where it instantly cools. As you can see, the 3D object is created through layering, where the printer will add one layer of the object at a time until you have a fully formed structure. The most common material used in 3D printing is plastic, but the use of some other materials allow for the creation of some pretty amazing products beyond simple tools and toys. 3D printing food is becoming very popular, and additive manufacturing has allowed for the creation of some pretty intricate treats. In the medical world, doctors are testing biomaterials for regenerative medicine. By using a patient's cells, doctors could 3D print small body parts like ears and noses. Some surgeons have even tested 3D printed organs for transplant. Recently, giant 3D printers in China printed 10 houses in just one day and at a cost of less than $5,000 per house, proving just how cost and time efficient 3D printing can be.
It stopped on my end. Anybody else? Jeff?
Same.
It's Zoom. So Jeff may be having a problem with his connectivity. So we'll just wait for a second because he'll probably bounce back in. There he is. Hi, Jeff.
Did it cut out?
In our end, it did, yeah.
All right. Well, that's all right. We'll just keep going. Can you see my screen?
Really interesting.
Okay. All right. So, from what I've seen is that students want hands-on learning experiences. All right. They want to be creating and making things and designing things. And, it kind of breaks the traditional mold of what a classroom should look like. And I think that's what a lot of schools are trying to move away from is, a traditional classroom. And it really gives students a chance to take ownership of their learning experience. So like they said, there's many different types of 3D printers that exist out there. And there's a lot of different applications. And what I'll focus in on is two different types. There's fused deposition modeling, FDM, and then there's stereolithography, SLA. And these are really the two types of printers that would be able for you to use in your classroom. Like I said, there's probably like 10 different methods, but we'll focus on these two. And the first one, the FDM one, this is the one you saw in the video where they take the plastic and it comes in on spools, and the plastic is fed into a head. The head heats up the plastic and it basically liquefies it. And it's kind of like injection molding where the plastic is then squeezed into a smaller size and it goes layer by layer on a plate, and it moves either up or down as the model is being created. And this is the one thing that's kind of crazy now is if you go and look on Amazon, they have models that are, you know, relatively inexpensive at $219 that, you know, have decent reviews and aren't that bad. If you wanted to get a higher quality one that's enclosed, which I'll talk about why in a minute is better to have that, you know, Dremel makes one that's like $1,500, and there's some other companies that have real solid ones that are around that price. But you can also build your own too if you really want to get crazy with your class, and you could build pretty solid ones for around $600, $700. Some pros and cons of this type is that the detail level is a little bit lower than the SLA. So you can see those two models at the bottom. The one is, it's the same exact model printed out. One that's printed in the FDM, you can see it's kind of, you know, almost looks like blurry, but it still does a pretty decent job.
Just a second, Jeff. Are you talking about a presentation or a slide? You're not sharing your screen?
Oh, you're not seeing any of this?
No. Great, thank you.
All right, sorry about that. I'm on a Chromebook, so I have to apologize. So you can see that the detail level is lower, but then, you know, you have some trade-offs where the consumables are very cheap, where you get a roll of the plastic spools that go on for only like $15 on Amazon. Some of the expensive machines, the cartridges are more expensive, but the problem with these machines is they tend to jam easily, and so you have to be able to take it apart. And like I showed you, I'll take back to the previous slide that you may have missed, that the ones that aren't enclosed, if you have like a cold room or something, or a drafty room, they have a tendency to the model has a tendency to peel off while it's printing. So it's better to have like an enclosed environment that kind of heats up and keeps it at a stable temperature. And so those are some of the pros and cons of that one. And then we have the stereolithography, which is another one that you could use. And this one is where a plate actually dips into a liquid resin, and a laser shines up through the resin onto the plate. And as the plate moves up, the laser goes around on the plate, and it hardens the plastic where the laser goes. And so with this one, you're going to get much higher quality models. And, you know, I was looking on Amazon, and they have affordable ones for about $219 now, but a higher quality one, I have two of these in my classroom. These Formlabs are about $4,000 a piece, and they make really nice, good quality models. You can see the quality level that this one produces down here is pretty remarkable. But the consumables are a little bit more expensive. So the cheaper consumables for the machine I found that was around $200 were about $30 for 500 grams. The machine that we have at our school, those Formlabs I was discussing, it's $150 for just 1 liter of the material. And the drawback of this this resin-based material is that it's extremely sticky and messy. And so if you spill it, it kind of gets all over the place and just makes a giant mess. And you have to use some chemicals to clean it up. And then these trays that go that the resin goes into have to be replaced frequently. And so it's another added expense. Also, after these are done printing, they're kind of like slimy and gooey, and you have to dip them into an alcohol solution, which, you know, creates storage issues because you're dealing with flammable substances. The other neat thing about this type is that there's lots of different material choices. You could do things that print in ceramic. There's flexible rubber choices that you could put in there, and so it kind of opens up the door for a lot of different types of things that your students can be printing. But like I said in the video, all of these, whether you use the plastic one or the resin-based one, you're going to have to do some sort of design on a software. And in the video, they said that, you know, there's all sorts of websites where you could get already completed objects on it and print them out. And I actually don't let my students print anything that they get on the internet, because it kind of defeats the purpose of them designing stuff. And so you do need to use the software, and luckily there is tons of free software out there. Autodesk is the biggest 3D software out there. And, you know, you could see the train picture up there as they do mechanical modeling in a software called Inventor. We have animation softwares they make and architecture ones. And a couple years ago, Autodesk actually made all of their software free to anyone to use as long as they're using it for educational purposes. So you can download and use all these softwares for free to get it to these STL type files that you need. The only drawback with that is that you do need to have a desktop computer, which most classrooms don't have. And so if you're like my school, we have a one-to-one computer program where all our students have Chromebooks. And so there is a software called Vectory that is free. And then also I know a lot of schools are using iPads for their one-to-one. And so there's a Shaper app on there that's free as well. And so it kind of opens up the possibility for you to, you know, whatever you're using, Apples or Chromebooks in your school, that you can have some sort of software to create the STL type files that the printer needs to have to print the files. You know, it brings up another issue. How do you learn how to use the software? And, you know, most of them are pretty easy to use, and there's tons of different YouTube videos out there where people have tutorials step by step on how to create different things. So that in itself kind of turns into a learning activity where you have students that could create something off of a tutorial to kind of teach themselves how to use it. And, you know, when I first started doing this, I had no idea how to use the software. So I'd always just kind of stay one lesson ahead of the students and follow along. And it's kind of nice. Then you just make assignments that have similar objectives as the tutorials and just have your students follow along. But like I said, I want to focus on how you could use these in your classrooms, because I know a lot of people kind of shy away because, you know, it doesn't relate to their subject matter. And so I just thought of some different projects looking around on the internet and thinking of different things that you could do. But in elementary school, I know my daughters are in kindergarten, you know, celebrating holidays is a big thing. And so, you know, whether it's Halloween or whatever, or Valentine's Day, students can design decorations or other things for the classroom, and they need to have some sort of device to hang it up. You know, if students are getting a story read to them, the teacher could have them kind of imagine what's going to happen next, or what the character is going to look like, and they could create it themselves. You know, basic 3D shape manipulating for students just to understand cylinders, cubes, and other things is really beneficial too. I always like this project that you can kind of, you know, scale up or down for whatever skill level you have, is just have the students come up with a product that they can market and sell. You know, there's a lot of things that go into this, a lot of different subject matters that kind of relate into this, where they could figure out the costs, you know, by calculating the volume used, or, you know, how much time it takes, you know, what's their time worth. And then, you know, when you have a 3D printer, you'll find that kids just sit and stare at it as it's going, and they always want to print stuff. And so it's a great way to use for a reward system for students, and especially in elementary students, you know, they're really into that. All right, so the next couple of slides, I'll kind of focus in on specific classes, more in the high school level or junior high level. But for science classes, you know, you could print organs to do cross sections, understand the human body more. Chemistry classes, I've done this before, where we've collaborated with our chemistry department, where students come up and design complex molecules, and they print them out. If you're studying bugs or other, you know, animals, students could design them on the computer and then print them out. It kind of helps them to really understand the different features and characteristics of those bugs. Simple machines, pulley, lever, screws, wedges, gear ratios. It all helps students really understand them a lot more. Math classes, building irregular figures and then calculating the volume. That's a great way to teach fractions and areas. This is one of my favorite projects I used to do when I was teaching a measurement, is you put students in groups and they have to actually make a puzzle. Each student makes a piece of the puzzle, and it has to fit together with the other students in their groups. And so it gets a way for students to collaborate with one another. And then you're also learning about measurement, and it's a good group project. Teaching sine and cosine and tangent manipulatives in a trigonometric class. And while I was doing research, I actually found that at Harvard, they have a manipulative calculus class where they're using it to construct 3D models to use in their calculus class. And so you could really scale this up or down for the skill level, you know, for all the different levels of math. We have English class. You know, I know there are a lot of things where they're doing different books where they create dioramas or different props or different things for posters where they could design and create them on the computer for whatever story or book they're reading. If you're doing poetry, have them create a 3D design that, responds to the feelings that are being evoked by a poem. And then I thought this was really neat, kind of like an ad lib word game where you could have pieces like you see down here and maybe have some different words on each side. And so you could flip the pieces around to create different sentences. And it's a great way to teach sentence structure in English class. For social studies classes, came up with just creating some different, if you have different issues in the community that you're facing, making things more handicap accessible, things like that, creating dwellings or different house structures for different Native American tribes, recreating historic monuments. For geography, it's really great. You can make different topographical maps of different areas that help students kind of understand the different features within that state. For foreign languages, have students create models of newly learned words, replicate artifacts or other cultural items. Again, you could kind of take the invention thing where students have to create something. You could make a culturally specific product, and then they have to kind of sell it to different investors and speak only that language. They have 3D printed calligraphy for different languages that have that. I know we have Japanese and Hebrew at our school. And then we have create jewelry of different cultures as well. So lots of different ways that you can incorporate it to all sorts of classes. So are there any questions from anyone in the audience?
I think it's really creative the way that you've suggested across the curriculum, Jeff. And how would you collaborate with colleagues to actually affect those in a school?
At our school, they've given us time during our PDs to meet with other departments. They've actually been really good where we've had one of our engineering classes they're piloting this year where they have geometry before and then they go to the engineering class after. And so this teacher meets and there's kind of a way that they have curriculum that kind of blends together, and so they could kind of attack it from different ways in each class. And so it's been really nice that way to collaborate. I know we're trying to get our physics class co-taught with one of our engineering classes, and so if you're lucky enough to have a school to do that, you can. But then also usually they'll give you time to do it, because when everyone hears like, oh, collaboration, everyone wants to do it. And so there's been a lot at our school with the science classes and the math classes.
And how long does it take to do the printing?
A small model, like we saw that dinosaur head, would probably be a couple hours. That's one of the challenges sometimes, is that it takes a really long time. And so like I said, we're fortunate enough where I have 2 of those Formlab machines, and then I have 4 of the plastic ones. And so we're lucky enough where we can have them going. But if you only have one, then yeah, that thing's going all the time.
Can you have them going overnight, for example, and program it?
Yeah, you could have them go overnight and they shut off by themselves, so it's really nice. Here's a question. We are about to get a 3D printer next year for our school. Is there something you would recommend to get started? I would a really easy activity I always do is making a keychain. You give the students like a set design parameter where it has to be a certain size, and then the students get to design the keychain, and it's kind of nice because they get to take something home, and it gets them nice and familiar using a software. And then most of the softwares, you could just import an image, and the students could actually just trace over it, and then it's called extruding, where you give your different thicknesses to things. And so it's a nice, easy project where, it's nice too. It's a great recruitment method for me, because you send out the 3D models into your school, and then, the kids are walking around with them. And so it works out really well that way.
Do you have a budget?
For my department, or? It's a lot. I think it's like $30,000, and we always there's something called Perkins grants, which is a federal grant. And so we always apply for Perkins money, and they always give us money to buy different equipment. And then we have something called NSERV, which is our local career and technical education area, and they give us monies too. And so the state, federal, and local monies, so it's pretty nice. And we had an alumni just call us up one day. He goes, "Oh, I saw a thing on 3D printing," and he goes, "I want to get you guys money." So he bought us a $60,000 3D printer.
Wow.
The thing is, we can't even use it because the consumables are like, I think like $1,200 to fill it up, and it's just not practical to have, you know, a classroom of 24 kids print stuff because it's just so expensive.
Have you gone back to the donor?
Excuse me?
Have you gone back to the donor and said?
It was kind of before my time when the machine came, but it just sits here now. This is only my 4th year at this school. And so we use it occasionally, but it's kind of a shame that all that money was spent. But, you know, it's like any technology, as it evolves, it just gets more, you know, cost effective to use it. And so, you know, the same machine now probably would be significantly less.
And so tell us about your students.
My students, I teach the second sequence of our engineering classes, and so I mostly have sophomores and juniors, some seniors in it, and then usually there's students that have some sort of interest in engineering, which is nice. But you know, we do give AP credit for taking our class, and so a lot of the times you get kids that are kind of trying to game the AP system because now they can take an elective. But you know, it's a good problem to have. I don't mind. And so, you know, hopefully within those students too, you can kind of interest them in the STEM field. And so usually that's kind of our clientele, or our students that have some interest in the STEM field.
And is it evenly split between boys and girls?
Right now, we actually have been piloting some classes where we have an all-girls introductory engineering class, and we have 2 sections of that this year. So we have 8 sections of our intro engineering class, and 2 of them are all female. And so we've been trying to get more females in it because I think we said there was only like 20% of it was females. And so, you know, one of the barriers to that is that, you know, they'd come in and they'd look around, there'd only be 3 or 4 girls in the class, or sometimes 1. And so, you know, for a high school girl, you know, any high school kid, that could be really intimidating if you're you're in the minority. And so that's actually increased our girl enrollment to 40%. So, you know, we'd like to just see it go up and up. And so it's pretty nice.
And do you know anything about the outcomes, the student outcomes? Do they continue practicing and go on for higher ed?
Yeah, we have a lot of students. I don't have the data right now, but we track the amount of students that go into STEM related careers that, you know, were in our class. And so it's pretty neat to see.
So that it's significant. I'm not asking for specific numbers.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And then the other thing that we like to pride ourselves on is that the amount of students that take our classes that go into the STEM careers, and they stay in the STEM fields once they're in college. And so, because it's a big advantage of the program is that once they get exposed to the engineering at a high school level, then, you know, they could really, you know, see if it's for them or not. Because I think engineering and architecture is one of those careers, you know, as like a 5 or 6 year old. And so a lot of students are like, oh, I want to be an engineer, but they never actually do any engineering until they actually go to college. And then by that point, you know, it's kind of hard to jump ship, or, you know, it's a big decision that you've made.
And what kind of assignments do you give them in terms of design challenges?
So we do a lot of robot building, and it's usually there's like 6 or 7 different prompts where you have to make a robot to do X, Y, and Z. And so they have to build it and then program it. And so how I use 3D printing in my class is that they have to create a part that works on their robot that, you know, is not something that we already have, and it has to be a unique part with, you know, complex geometry that is beneficial to their robot. And so they have to design it, and then we 3D print it out. So it's kind of neat.
Yeah, this is really interesting, Jeff. Thanks for sharing it with us.
You're welcome. And I did post in the chat a survey. If you guys could take a minute. Did you guys get that survey? Here's the survey again. If everyone could fill it out, just a reflection on my presentation. But thank you very much, everyone, for attending and listening.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
All right, thank you.
We're working on Jeff's survey. Okay, and next up is Megan.
Okay. Hello.
Hi, Megan.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Jeff, if you would please stop sharing your screen. And I love the use of the Mentimeter. I've not seen that before. Okay, Megan, when you're ready to share your screen.
Okay. Let me get where I need to be here.
Yeah.
I was trying to do Jeff's survey, so. Okay. Okay, are you able to see?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Okay.
You just briefly introduce yourself. We are recording, so folks will watch this later too.
My name is Megan Crocker. I'm currently working on my Master's of Education and Learning Technologies. So I'm a coach program candidate, and I am also a Google certified teacher for level 1 and 2 certification. I teach 4th grade inclusion. So the way that I'm using Google Forms in my classroom, we're going to learn a little bit about that today with using it as formative assessment. Okay.
Great. Go ahead.
Okay, so I have pasted the link to this presentation in the chat, but there's also a QR code and the link is attached to this presentation as well. Okay, so to start, I would like to just go around and get some of your feedback. What is your experience with Google Forms? Have you heard of this application before? If you have heard of it, are you already using this application? And if so, in which ways? So if we could kind of just go around the room. I'm going to start with Chris, if you don't mind sharing what you already know.
I'm not able to hear Chris.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm not quite hearing what you're saying.
Not yet. Maybe we should move on, Megan.
Yeah, let's move on to Heather, and then Chris, if you get up working, you can just chime in.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I actually use Google Forms pretty frequently in my lessons, and I have heard of the application. I mostly use these for either surveys or quizzes. So that's just kind of my experience so far.
Okay. Gustavo, do you want to share?
Yeah, I have a similar experience. I know that I have used Google Forms mostly for surveys. I know I've done it with both staff and students, especially because we are a school that uses Google G Suite, and so it makes it pretty easy to send those forms out. So that's kind of my experience with it.
Okay, great. Jill, what about you?
Hi, I am familiar with Google Forms, and I'm not currently in the classroom, but I have used it in a professional work environment for building surveys and things like that.
Okay. Dr. Alcorti, do you want to share?
I use them primarily as quizzes and for feedback. I really like to share the data with the survey takers. So data that's not sensitive, of course. So that's kind of
Right.
fun.
Okay, Chris, are you able to share? No, we're still not hearing you. Okay, well, maybe just type into the chat your
Can
response.
you hear me through the computer?
Oh, there we go. Yep, we can hear you that way.
Okay. So I'm similar to Gustavo, we're a Google school, so I've used it pretty frequently for surveys and for quizzes. I like that you can build feedback into the responses when you do it as a quiz. And then I just also like the ease of data visualization.
Okay, perfect. So this presentation is actually just going to focus on the basics of Google Forms because there are so many things that we can do with Google Forms. So we're going to take a look at our objectives. First of all, the first objective would just be to build a basic understanding then of Google Forms. Then we're going to take a look at learning how to create Google Forms for formative assessment purposes. And then finally, just analyzing the practical application of Google Forms in both the teaching and learning context. So to start, I've just connected this presentation to the ISTE standards for educators. The first standard being standard 5, the educator as a designer. So just educators design authentic learner-driven activities and environments that recognize and accommodate learner variability, specifically in standard 5A, using technology to create, adapt, and personalize learning experiences that foster independence and accommodate learner differences and needs. And then standard 7, as well, the educator as an analyst. So educators understand and use data to drive their instruction and support students in achieving their learning goals. Specifically B and C in that standard, using technology to design and implement a variety of formative and summative assessments that accommodate learner needs, provide timely feedback to students, and inform instruction. And then also using assessment data to guide progress and communicate with students, parents, and education stakeholders to build student self-direction. Okay, so we're going to start off just talking about what is Google, or what is a Google form, and why should we use it in the classroom? What are the benefits? So to begin with, Google Forms are just it's a G Suite application that allows for the creation of surveys, quizzes, polls, and more. It is a means to collect and process data in real time. And it's a tool that allows the user to summarize results with charts and graphs. Some of the benefits of Google Forms is basically just looking at best practices for assessment. So Google Forms really allows the user to collect data, which is really what we're trying to do, because we're using that data to drive instruction with our students. It also allows for differentiation within the tool. So based off of students' responses to questions, you can create a form that will move them through a progression to actually pinpoint what students need. And then it also gives your students immediate feedbacks. For example, if you're using the quizzes tool, they can see how they're performing. What I like to do is I don't necessarily assign number points to students when they're taking a Google Forms survey or formative assessment. What I do is I say, well, if they got it wrong, I might have it jump to a reteach section where they view maybe a video from Khan Academy or some other source that's just going to kind of give them the immediate feedback that they need. And then another benefit to Google Forms is that they're easy to create. So they have templates. If you're not comfortable creating from scratch or on a blank template, you can go from templates that are already created. There's also a variety of question types. So some of the question types that they have might be multiple choice, short answer, paragraph, check boxes. They have drop-down boxes, and they even incorporate grids with multiple choice or check boxes. And then also the sharing options, because I am in a Google school, we do use Google Classroom. So it's very easy to share, but it's also easy to share in email and things like that. And we're going to kind of take a look at those different ways. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So how do I create a Google form? So I kind of made a little jump to here, looking at the basics of creating a Google form. So the first step would just be to open Google Forms from your Chrome browser or to go to the site forms.google.com. So there's this little icon here. All you need to do in order to open up the Google Forms is you would just need G Suite and about 10 minutes of your time to actually create that form. From here, the second step is that you would be clicking on a blank document or choosing a template from a variety of options. So that looks something like this when you click into Google Forms. And then you would either select the blank document form here, or you can choose from a variety of templates if you're looking for contact information. So this is something that you might use if you're beginning the school year, you want contact information from parents, you can send this out via email. Do a mass email and the parents can reply for their contact information. You can do RSVPs, t-shirt signups. We order those t-shirts for students. A lot of the times in my school, we order them for pretty much everything. So that would just be a good way for parents to fill out that information. And it kind of takes away the paper pencil from things getting lost or misplaced. Step 3, to move on, you would format your Google form. So here you would name your Google form, add a description to it. You can change the theme, the background, or the font. And that just looks like going into here, this little paint palette. You can change the banner. You can change the name of your Google form. So if it's untitled, you can add a description. Changing anything with a theme, you can change the color scheme, the font. So it's customizable in so many different ways depending on what you like or what your needs are. From here, the fourth step would just be adding questions by clicking on the untitled question, and then you just simply type it in. So you can change the question types like the question types we discussed, and you can add more questions to meet your needs in terms of what you want your students to know or demonstrate. So just going into the box where it says question, you would type the question that you have into the box, and then going to the drop-down box here to the right, you can then just change the question type from that drop-down menu. And then you can add more questions from the right panel. And you can also, if you start getting intricate, you can add content such as YouTube videos or images. And then you can even create new sections from the right-hand panel. One thing that I really like about the sections and adding sections from that panel is when you use multiple choice questions, this is where a lot of that differentiation comes into play. So they have the 3 little dots on the right-hand side of the bottom corner, and it says go to section based on answer. So this is where I start to differentiate for my students because I use this a lot in my math class. And if students get an answer wrong, I will usually insert some type of Khan Academy video. For example, we were doing a Google form on comparing fractions. And if they improperly compared based on comparing to a benchmark fraction, what I would do is I would decompose the standard, find the videos that related, and then I could plug in those YouTube videos. So when they got it wrong, it would just jump to the video, and then they could go back and fix their responses. Any questions about that? I know I'm kind of going fast. Okay, so once you've added all of your questions, all you need to do is just choose your form settings. So you can collect email addresses, you can limit to 1 response per student, you can create response receipts, and many other options. So this would just be to go into the settings, like shown in the upper right-hand corner here, and then you would just select the check boxes that you wanted to have as a preference, and then just remember that you would have to save those preferences. So respondents can also have the option to edit their responses after they submit them. And then if you want students to get immediate feedback from the class collectively, you would be able to see summary charts and text responses. Okay, and then finally, you would just send your form and begin collecting responses. So you can view responses in forms or in sheets based on your preference. And all you would do is just click this little send tool. There's the little eye icon to preview. I highly recommend you preview. before you send it, just to make sure it looks the way you want it to and it's doing exactly what you want it to with your students. But again, you can collect email addresses, you can email it, you can send it by sharing a link, or you can embed your Google form into a website. And I know also when you send an email to, one thing that I like is that you can include the form in the email so people can access it directly. You can also share it to Facebook and Twitter, and then there's also the option to add collaborators. So the last part just comes down to what happens once your form is created and people start to respond. So if you click the responses tab that's in your setup, you'll be able to view charts and tables like the ones shown in the bottom left corner here. And that's all related to the data that you're collecting on each question. So you can get a summary of that data, or you can look at the data individually. This comes in handy when you're focusing on specific students, trying to target their needs. I like to use that a lot and see, well, okay, we were comparing fractions, but where did we get it wrong? Was it you couldn't compare to a benchmark, or you had no idea what strategies to use? So it kind of just helps pinpoint what students need to help you drive instruction. You also have the option to choose to export your data to Google Sheets. This is nice if you want to share that data or collaborate. I have a special ed teacher that I work with, so a lot of times I will export my data and then I'll share that file to her so that we can both look and see what students need. So she's working with one group and I'm working with the other. Those email addresses could be included and collecting that information so that we know which student was getting it wrong. So if she has a different group than I do, she knows where to target her students and I know where to target mine. So just a few tips and tricks when going through Google Forms. In terms of the practical application, Google Forms, you can definitely create those short formative assessments to drive your instruction. You can also, and one thing that I like to do in my classroom is when kids are working on things like vocabulary or just any topic really, they can create their own quizzes to demonstrate their understanding. And what's nice about the quizzes option is that I like to require my students to put those answers in. So then it's not only demonstrating their own knowledge, but then they can share the quiz to other students and have them take their assessment. So then we get the data collection from it, but we also can see where the student who created the quiz is in their learning. Another option would be to differentiate your assessments like we talked about by using that go-to section based on answer feature. And that becomes a little more intricate and complicated. So if you have the basics and you have the understanding, then you can start to kind of play around with it and manipulate the order of sections and determine, if a student answers B, but the answer was supposed to be A, where do they go from here? If they answered correctly, do they move on to the next question? Do you want to challenge them with something with enrichment? There's a lot of opportunity there. And then also just remembering too that you can insert videos, images, or other content to facilitate learning. So I know, especially in ELA at the 4th grade level, the big standard is kids integrating information from more than one source. So a lot of times you can give a little snippet of text and then you can also embed video so that they have to kind of go back and forth before they can answer and see, both points of integration of that information. So after all of that said and done, how do you think that you might use Google Forms? So can we share some ideas about, ways that you might integrate this? Have you learned anything new? Any other information that you feel you want to dig a little bit deeper on, and how you might use this in your teaching context? So let's start with Heather. Do you have any idea?
So I've actually had students who have created their own quizzes on Google Classroom, and this has been a really cool way to, especially with like language arts. I have one student that's gifted, so she's been making quizzes. I've even showed her like standards and Bloom's taxonomy, and she's making questions using all of that information, and then she shares those quizzes with other kids in class based on maybe like a small book that she's read, and the kids really like it when she does that, and she really enjoys being engaged in that kind of way.
Right. I think it's an awesome way just to get that student voice incorporated in that too, to just give them the power where it's not always the teachers making the assessment, but they're kind of exercising some of that higher order thinking to create their own. Awesome ideas. Jill, any ideas about how you might use Google Forms? You said you're not in a teaching context, but maybe in other ways.
I mean, I think I am working with some students in writing workshops and in other ways outside of the classroom. So I do like the idea that you had about having them create some of their own quizzes and having them use it in that way. And then also just around some of the differentiated learning, the ways of using forms to send different students down different paths depending on how they're progressing.
Excellent. Chris?
It's such an easy way to kind of start the process of getting kids reteaching, because it's, you know, if they're doing something in a form and you have something built into the form, they can get what they need on the spot, and they don't necessarily have to wait for you to have that aha moment, like, oh no, like you need to work on this or come back to this, or wait till you an assessment or something, and then get them the reteach they need. So I think it's just such a nice, not necessarily a barrier, but kind of just like an easy redirect you can build into any lesson that, you know, could potentially serve the needs of a wide variety of kids.
Right, definitely. That's one of my favorite things because I use this a lot in my math class. And so if I'm doing guided math small groups, which, you know, a lot of elementary teachers are doing, you know, they don't always have access to me as the teacher. So it's nice to say, well, you got stuck on this question. So do we sit there and stare at the screen, or do we get frustrated? No, it just jumps right to that reteach to address those misconceptions immediately. And I find I've asked students, you know, how do you like that it does that? Or would you rather not take the time to watch the video? How do you feel about it? And I'm constantly getting positive feedback that they like that they don't have to wait. They like that, oh, maybe I just misunderstood this part. And they're also getting it from a different source of information other than myself. So I think sometimes they like that.
And then the kids that don't need it can keep moving and
exactly
waiting for you to reteach to the whole class.
Well, and there's sometimes what I do too is the kids that do get it, towards the end, I start building in some enrichment. Because if you're just going to fly through this Google form and go, okay, I did it, I'm done. Well, then I still have a small group for another 15 minutes. So what are you doing during that time? Well, maybe you're going and you're building onto that. So I've added in links to HyperDocs that I've created specifically for fractions where they can go through and then practice with some of the activities. We also use Go Math. So we have a digital resource of Think Central. You can use Screencast-O-Matic and you know, upload some of those videos, and kind of, I've extended kids into some of the 5th grade standards based on their learning continuums. So there's a lot that you can do with differentiation there. It really just comes to playing around with it, figuring out what you're comfortable with. Like I said, this is kind of a scratching the surface, basic introduction, but you'll see later on I have some resources that I'm going to share that can really kind of push the way that you guys are using Google Forms already and take that to that higher order level as well. Dr. Elcordy, do you want to share anything?
I'm really enjoying the discussion around student agency and differentiation. So I do have a question regarding your resources. So are you making all of your own, or are you able to link to others?
So I've linked to others. I'll pull those up here in a minute, but I have some really good resources. I did pull together just a progressive YouTube playlist that's a little differentiated based off of where people are in terms of their own learning continuum with Google Forms. I do have one that I created myself just as a planning document, just because when you're planning for assessment, even though it is formative, it's nice to plan kind of with that end in mind. And then if you can have, when I first started, I had to do everything on paper first. I had to write it out. What kinds of questions do I want? How do I want them to be able to respond? I don't always want multiple choice. Sometimes I want some open-ended, just because I'm trying to hit those different DOK levels too as I'm assessing them. So I created my own planning guide that I will be sharing.
Oh, wonderful.
It's just the way that I was thinking about, like, what are my standards? What are my questions? And just kind of organizing that information as well. But there are some other outside resources that are not my own that I've shared and I've also referenced at the end of this presentation. Anyone else? Did I miss anyone? think we got everybody. Okay, so very quickly, I just wanted to give an example of one Google form that I had created with my students. So in this Google form, you can see when you're looking at the data, I don't know if everybody can see that, but there's the questions pop up at the top. It'll tell you the number of responses, and then it gives you like this beautiful little pie chart of how many students chose what response. So this was just with a quick comparing fractions. So we compared 1/2 to 2/4. Was it greater than, less than, or equal to? They all said equal to, which is good. And then number 2, I like to do this similar questions. I like to do a couple of them just because if they're getting one wrong, like why did they get it wrong? I like to look at the data that way as well. So the second question is the same, but then I started getting into the practical application of comparing fractions. So they were given a scenario, and the questions surrounded the scenario were comparing a runner's distance to a benchmark. And this is where I started to see a lot of different responses. So most of the students were getting that information correct. I had a couple that were a little off. So those were the students that I would be looking at pulling into that small group and just kind of assessing, well, why did they think it was equal? And then maybe going back over, you know, the hands-on manipulatives, maybe using some of the representational models like number lines to figure out and compare to a benchmark. And then same thing on the second question that was similar to comparing to a benchmark. But then I found this really interesting that when it came to comparing the two fractions again, 100% of the class got it correct. So what's nice about this formative assessment is it's a progression of questions. And when you start getting to the application, you can kind of actually see the breakdown of understanding. So then when I pull those students into small group, then that instruction is more guided by this data. So then again, there's just some open-ended questions so that it's not all just multiple choice. And then ordering fractions, we added in a little bit of that to see how they would do. So roughly, I did add about 10 questions. When you preview, so what they would see is if I said 1/2 was greater than 2/4 and I hit next, it would jump to a section like this where it was talking about comparing fractions visually and on a number line. So they would watch the video, get some feedback, and then they could go back to the question, modify their response, and then it would take them to the next question. So anytime that they were getting stuck, they were getting that automatic feedback. Any questions about that? Okay, so just some steps to success when it comes to developing the Google Forms. Obviously, start small. There's so much that you can do between creating quizzes, different surveys and polls, adding jump to sections for differentiation. The possibilities really are endless. So starting small and then kind of building on that knowledge as you get more comfortable with Google Forms is the best way to go. Also remember, this was the one mistake that I made the first time I did this, is I did not collect email addresses to identify my respondents, and then I said, which student said what? I didn't put anything in there like type your name. I didn't add any other information like that, and they said, okay, everybody's got to take the assessment over. So they weren't too happy. So that's just a good pointer to make sure that you can identify who responded when you're using this in the classroom. Also, be sure to preview your form before you send it. So I always like to go through my form and take the assessment, get some wrong, get some right, see how the assessment becomes interactive, if it's interacting, if it's jumping to the right section, so that I can make sure that when the students have this sent to them, they're not confused on why didn't I get a video, I must have gotten it right, but really I got it wrong. So there's just no discrepancies with any of the things that are happening in the form. And then the final step there is when you want to kind of dig a little bit deeper, you can use the resources that are provided. So those will be at the end of the presentation. One cool thing that I really like about Google Forms too, just to add in, is that you can access Google Forms on a smart device. So even though they don't have an app that you can download from the iTunes Store, from Google Play, you can access your Google Forms through Google Drive. And because there is a Google Drive app, Any form that you begin creating, you can see that on your phone. And as busy teachers, that's always a positive when we can look at this information on the go. So lastly, just taking a look at resources. I've created hyperlinks in this presentation for all of the resources. So if you're looking at more benefits of Google Forms, there's a link there. There's also a link to a blog post on how to create a Google Forms template. So just kind of starting basic. There's a little Google Forms cheat sheet that I pulled some information and kind of compiled that together as a step-by-step guide. I've also created this Google Forms planning guide. And this is just kind of what I would do when I would go through the process. So I would come up with an assessment title. How many questions? What subject or standards am I addressing? What type of questions types do I want to add? And then I would just use section numbers or question numbers, the question, and then any notes. So in the notes, I would generally say, okay, if they get this wrong, I want it to jump to a section that would reteach this concept. So that was just a nice way for me to kind of organize all of the things that were happening in my Google form. There's also this great playlist that can kind of walk you through creating the formative assessments. Google Forms for Educators talks about the question types. There's how to skip 2 questions based on answers, viewing responses in Google Forms, and then formative assessment workflow using Google Forms and filters. So there's a lot of information there that you can kind of browse at your leisure if you're interested in learning more. And then one other link I had here was just advanced Google Forms features that came from the Digital Inspiration blog, talking about some of the things like file uploads that we have not addressed here today. So if you're looking into getting into more heavier, I should say, information about Google Forms, I would definitely start there. And then finally, if you get completely lost, there's always the open source G Suite Learning Center, so you do not have to log in to access this information. And if you click here, it is linked in this presentation. So it would just take you there, and it gives you all of the information that you would need to be successful in creating Google Forms. So finally, just remember, Google Forms can be used in both small and big ways. So just choose what works best for you and your teaching context. If you don't mind, I'm going to send this link. You can also, if you'd like to use a QR code reader, you can do this on your phone as well. If you don't mind just taking a short survey and giving me some feedback of what you think of this presentation. Let me see, I'll get in and add that to our chat real quick.
Megan, for the link that's in your slides, I think that the Y is supposed to be part of the hyperlink.
For which part? I'm sorry.
There's like a little, see the Y that's kind of like hanging off below it?
Oh, maybe. Yep. Looks like that
Some
got.
people are having trouble. That's the.
Sorry. I apologize. Let me see if I can change that. Oh my. Okay. Oh, yeah. It's not giving us. Sorry about that. It's trying to translate it for me.
And you can even just type it. So when they paste it, you can just type the Y on the end and it works.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
Let's see.
Well, thank you, Megan.
Stop sharing my screen real quick, and I'm going to just send this out. There's the link. So that should work. Thanks, Chris, for catching that for me. I appreciate it. I think the box was just too small and it tried to.
Yeah, I only know because it's happened to me like 50 times before. So.
Well, and the color was so different, so it was hard to see, but thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Megan. That was very informative and a great background to start with the Google Forms and some creative uses. Any quick questions for Megan before we go on to Chris? Thank you. Okay,
right,
so
thank
Chris
you.
is up next. Thanks so much, Megan. Great job.
Thanks.
And Chris, if you could please start by introducing yourself.
All right, I grabbed a new headset. Does this microphone work?
Yes, perfect.
All right, cool. We got a working microphone now. So my name's Chris Beatty. I am a high school Spanish teacher. This is my 6th year at my current school, but my 8th year teaching. And I'm going to be showing you guys kind of a brief overview of an app and a website called ClassKick, and then hopefully get you a chance to make your own ClassKick to see kind of how it works and what you can do, and if it's something you can see yourself using with your students. So let me get you guys some links in the chat. The first thing I'll send out is just a little background survey. Let's see. And that'll kind of just give me an idea of what kinds of devices you have access to in your classrooms. And that ends up being useful to me because there's a couple things that will change depending on what your students have, especially. So you as a teacher, it doesn't necessarily matter what kind of device you're using, but in terms of how you create your materials and what you have the students do in ClassKick, there are some things to consider depending on, especially if they can write on the screen or not. So that first link is just a little background and what kind of technology you have access to. And then the second link I'll send is just some general resources. So there's some general resources in the second one. And then the third one I'll send is the presentation. All right, and then I will slide over to my presentation. Let's see. Okay, this is my first time sharing a screen here. Are you guys able to see my screen?
There you go. Yes, absolutely.
All
You
right,
just need
cool.
to present.
All right, well, welcome to ClassKick. So I'll get a little bit of insight if you guys have used it before or not, based on my first survey. And then, like I said, I'm a high school Spanish teacher. If you're also looking for the link to the survey, I put it in my slides. This is the second year my school is fully one-to-one with iPads. We did a 4-year rollout with our students. Our students own their devices, and so we did it 1 year at a time, and which actually was quite useful, especially in terms of understanding the needs for bandwidth at the school. It was nice to kind of add one whole class at a time. And then this is my 3rd year using ClassKick, and so my use of it's evolved over time. I ended up starting to use it. I had heard of it. I'd seen it on it was a blog or a newsletter, and I kind of played with it, never started using it. But then it's actually the founders are from Chicago. They had a meetup event that I ended up kind of just going to on a whim in the summer. And then from there, kind of like really haven't looked back, and I've used it quite a bit, and how I've used it has kind of evolved quite a bit over time. So just for today, what I especially am interested in doing is getting a chance to see what it's like to be a student using ClassKick and ClassKick as a digital learning platform. And then the second piece is then designing your own learner-driven activity in ClassKick to then hopefully identify a practical application of the app or the platform in your learning environment. And there's a wide variety of ways that you can do that. And so the sample one I have is kind of just to get familiarized with the app. It's not necessarily super complex in terms of the types of tasks you have to do, but just to kind of get an idea of what students are able to do with it as a learning platform to then kind of like brainstorm and see what would fit best based on your learning environment. And so in terms of what ClassKick is, the easiest way to explain it is a digital notebook or sketchpad or workbook. And that's kind of how I use it most often in my class. It's kind of a supplement to what we do in the classroom. Most of what I want my kids doing in class is communicating with each other. And then outside of class, typically their work is done in ClassKick. They do things in class and in ClassKick as well. Doesn't mean that I'm completely paperless, but this is kind of my go-to digital option because of the wide variety of tools that you can use. And then especially since we have iPads, I love it because of the ability for students to write on the screen. There's a lot of other apps I like where students can do that, but ClassKick's nice because it's fast, it's easy, and then as a teacher, you get a lot of real-time insight into what the students are doing. And I'll show you what that looks like on the teacher end when you create your own Classic set today, you'll get a chance to see what that looks like as a teacher. But in real time, you can see what every student's doing, where they're at, how they're progressing through the set as a whole, and you can give feedback in real time as well. The other thing that's really neat about it is there's a variety of different types of media you can add to the slides. You can add links, you can add images, you can add manipulatives that they can move around. You can insert YouTube videos that then will kind of pop out into a second screen for them. And then you can also add pictures and audio. And then students can also do all of that themselves, which I really like. And so on the one hand, you as a content creator, as a teacher, you can do quite a bit, but then also you put a lot of that power in the students' hands to do things with different ways to represent what they're learning. And so in a language classroom, it's especially applicable when we're doing things with vocabulary. They can take pictures of things, or I can take pictures of things around the classroom that they have to find and label, et cetera. Or they can link out, they can talk on the slides, they can record conversations with their classmates right there, all from one spot. And then you can use it as a launch pad to other apps as well. In terms of the connection to ISTE, in addition to looking at what Classic is, I'm hoping that this also kind of leads to a little more reflection in terms of how we use digital tools in the classroom, and then how we can leverage different kinds of technologies to meet our goals for good learning, and to kind of think about what good learning is, and then how technology gets us to that point. But then specifically within Standard 5, the teacher is the creator in terms of using technology to create these types of personal, meaningful, deep learning experiences for their students, but then also to continue to explore different aspects of instructional design to create learning experiences for students that are innovative, that are engaging, but then also supportive to the different needs that each of our students has. The main advantages for me for Classic are the ease of creation and distribution to my students. Especially having the iPad, it's as easy as creating a set, assigning it to my classes, and my students are pretty accustomed to going to the application when they know that we're using Classic. We have the pro version at my school, and so students, I don't have to distribute codes constantly to the kids. If you don't have the pro version, it's as easy as having those listed on the board like you would with what homework was for the day for each class period. The real-time insight and feedback is something I also really, really like. I can have kids moving all over the room doing a lot of different things, or at home working on homework and email me with a question in real time. I can give them feedback and kind of see where they're stuck. And then also, as a component of that, learning can happen anytime, anywhere. And then same for me, whether I have my computer or my iPad, I can give my students feedback anywhere I am on the go, which is really, really practical for me as a teacher. You can also then use Classic to differentiate to a pretty significant degree of detail. It can be as finite as having different Classic sets for students working on different skill sets. You could also, in the same Classic set, have students jump to different slides based on what they're doing. You as the teacher, with the insight that you get being able to see their work on the screen, could then direct them to different materials. But then also, in terms of accessibility, students don't have to handwrite. They can type. If they don't want to type, they can handwrite on the screen. That you can also record. I've got a student with a broken arm right now, and so instead of, and he has trouble typing with the cast that he has. So the majority of the time he's recording his voice on each slide, which is perfectly fine. And he's speaking in Spanish, and so that's kind of one of our goals anyway. So it's kind of just a neat way to address the needs of the kids. And then, like I mentioned before, just the ability of both the teacher and the student to be content creators and add different things to the slides. And then one other main advantage is just accountability for the students. And so I like it for a wide variety of reasons. One thing that the students typically don't like about Classic is that they are accountable for the work that they're doing. And because I can see at any time, either whether in the app or out of the app, you can see when they're logged in or when they're logged out. You can see the work that they do. And so instead of, I guess you still could scramble and get things done at the last minute, and that's always going to happen. But I, to a degree, I've seen a reduction in kids trying to scribble down kind of random answers just to make it look like they've done something, because they know it's very easy for me to go through the work with a great degree of detail, and to make sure that they've actually done good work on each side. And then before we kind of transition into you guys seeing Classic as students and then making your own sets, just some general tips. The biggest tip I could give, and this really clicked for me when I met for the Classic meetup, is you don't want to overload each slide. And so like my initial instinct was just to, I just started off by digitizing things I was already doing in class and just putting basically one page on a slide. But it's actually what you don't want to do. You want to try to limit what's on each slide. And students at first, depending on how long you use one of these sets, I'll tend to use it for like a chapter. And so sometimes like the chapter set might be like, I don't know, like let's say 30 slides, and they're like, oh my gosh, 30 slides. But really it's only that long because you've split things up to a great degree of detail. And the reason you want to split it up is it makes it much more efficient to give each student feedback. Regardless of what kind of device you're on, if all you have to look at is kind of just a chunk of the information at a time, you can get through each student's work much faster and identify who needs help, who doesn't, and move through it much more quickly than scrolling and flipping through the pages. In my case, especially on my iPad, it's incredibly efficient to kind of chop it the way that I do for giving students feedback, especially when they're writing. And that way I don't have to scroll as much in terms of each student's slide, and I can just flip. You scroll down through each student's individual work one by one. And so it's kind of made my workflow in terms of providing good feedback to students significantly more efficient and just less frustrating when I split the information onto a variety of different slides. My other tip would be to create your content in Google Drive, or I know a lot of us use Google Drive, or if you don't, create it elsewhere to then copy paste or import as a PDF into Classkick. And the reason I say that is it's just much easier year to year to kind of like just develop your lesson plans over time and go back to what you did previously. It also is just easier to tweak and to change. But then also for students who, if it's a student, maybe in my case, that they come to school and their iPad's dead or an iPad broke and they're getting it fixed. It's very easy to print it out. I have a student right now who currently has limited screen time due to head injury in a car crash, and so I print all of her materials, and it's just much simpler to have everything ready to go and be able to print out for those students. Or the students that don't like to work in Classkick, I always make it an option that I will print it out on paper for them, and they just submit a picture of their work in Classkick when they're done with it, and there I can mark it up in Classkick as well. So that's also something I tend to have students do. Another just general tip. It's great for correcting homework. And this is when I don't teach freshmen this year, but when I taught freshmen, this was really, really useful in terms of training young students a process of actually going through and correcting their work and thinking about what their responses were. So they take a picture of their work, it's in Classkick, and then right there they can mark it up in Classkick, and that way you don't have the kids scratching things out with pen and then they're not really sure what they wrote or why they wrote it. But then also it gives me some insight into what types of corrections they're making, if they're making their corrections, and if they understand the corrections they're making and why. And then just a couple fun ideas. It's great as a digital game board. A couple that I play are Connect 4 and Battleship. So instead of making a gazillion copies of paper games and things, or buying a whole bunch of Battleship games, I can make them, put them into Classkick, and they can play with their partners really easily. With younger students, when we're learning family members or adjectives to describe people, I have a little like guess who game that they play in there where they can, and at the same time they're talking and using the language, and then that's their digital game board. I've also used it as like a choose your own ending type of activity, because they can jump slides on the bottom of each page. So if you want like a certain thing to happen, you jump to slide 32 or whatnot. So there's a handful of different things you can do. So there's just kind of a couple of tips and ideas. But then I do have some words of caution as well. There is a feature, and you'll see I have it active for the set that you're going to use as students. You can set it where students can help each other, so they can raise their hand and say they need help. Both the student asking for help and the person giving the help are anonymous. So it's nice where kids don't feel afraid to show like that they don't know how to do, a certain problem or page or multiple pages. And it's nice in that sense. It's nice, for kids that either excel or do like to help their classmates. They can jump in and give help. The downside is, it's another area where you really have to train the kids in what good help is, and they're not just going and giving the answer, and then also that the expectation is they're not just going on other people's slides and writing random things or bothering each other, and that it's actually a process where they're providing help to their classmates through that feature. So that's something that I don't always turn on. It depends on what we're doing. It depends on who the students are and how much I've been able to train them in doing that. So when I have freshmen, I do leave that feature on because I spend a lot of time investing in teaching them how to help one another and what my expectations are for that. But then when I have students that I know have never had me before and haven't used the app, and they're older, I tend to not turn it on because the retraining is just something that isn't always necessarily worth the time. The other kind of word of caution, if you're going to use it, is the free version. There's no Google login. And again, it just depends on your students and how you're going to use ClassKick. But eventually they will figure out that they can sign in as each other as long as they know the name that people were using. And they can do it whenever they want, wherever they want, and they can make changes to that, other students' work. They can erase things. They can copy the students' work. So I kind of found this out, in an unfortunate way because, one of my students had realized that other kids were copying her work, that they were going into her ClassKick because they knew that she was doing a good job, and they were basically just, they were actually just stealing her work from her, work that she'd spent time to do. So that was kind of a bummer. And so, easy way to combat this is just to do individual ClassKick sets for a day. It means you'll have code per day, but it's a way to keep students from just going into ClassKick sets and doing things they shouldn't. Or when they are outside of the classroom, you can lock the ClassKick set. So if it's something that they're working on in class, you just lock it when they're done. They still could go into another student's ClassKick and look at their answers. So that's something to kind of just be mindful and aware of. It's something I wish they would change. But as of right now, the Google login just comes with the pro version. So then if you guys are ready, there's two ways where you can, two places you can go to start working on your ClassKick set as a student. You can either go to classkick.com or you can go to the ClassKick app if you have it. Whether you're in the app or you're on the website, you do want to go to, you want to log in as a student for right now, and then eventually you will log in as a teacher. But you want to log in as a student to start. And then the code that we're going to end up using is in the slides. And so you guys will, once you click student, the next button that you'll click is log in. And it'll take you to enter your pro invite code, or I think now it just says enter your code with the recent update. And this is the code that you'll put in. And then once you've gotten past that point, if you do have a Google login, you'd want to click sign up with Google. If you don't, you would just log in with your email in the boxes that are there, or when you sign up, you'll put in just a normal email address. And then from there, it'll take you into the set. So if whichever one you guys would like to try, there is our code. And then I will back out here. Well, I guess I'll leave it up for a second so you guys have the code up. In the meantime, if anybody had any questions about getting started or how it works or how you use it, I'm more than happy to answer any of that. Man, we got 2 people in already. Very cool. So what I can show you guys is on my teacher end. Let's see. I don't know if it's going to. Can you guys still see my screen? Or do you see me now? Okay, so on my screen, so on the teacher end, this is kind of the creation dashboard, and then I can also go and see my students' work in real time. And this is the web version. And then I also have it up on my iPad as well. So right now we can see that there's 2 students in, and then when students log in, their slides light up. If either Heather or Dr. Angela were to leave, their little slides would turn kind of more grayish. But then also you can see which slide each student is on because it's got the little border around it, which is nice. And so like as students are working through things, you can really see, someone's been on slide 3 for a while and it's either they need help or, maybe they're off task and whatnot. So give you guys a second to log in and play around a little bit. And then for the people that are in, when I jump onto your slide, you should get a little pop-up that says that your teacher's helping you. So it's also a nice other way to kind of keep kids accountable is if they've been lingering for a while and you don't want to necessarily draw a ton of attention to it, I'll just go sit on their slide for a little bit. And you can even write a little note like, hey, what's going on? And they can see it in real time, which is pretty neat for each student. Everybody doing okay? Or need any help or have any questions? And so as you work through them, it'll show you like the different features of ClassKick. And so this one's pretty simple. I know this is not necessarily very deep learning. It's just to show you the different things that you can do, what the students can do. One of the slides has manipulatives. And then eventually the very last slide is going to show you, it's going to have the link to create your own teacher account to create your own set. Oh, good. We have some pizza. And then you have little stickers as a teacher. So my stickers are all in Spanish. So you guys get some little stickers when they're doing good work. This is also an easy way to give feedback because you can go right down the slides and give students just stickers. So I have a couple already preset. One of them is it just tells them to put accent marks on. I have a try again sticker. Please complete. If they're absent, I throw a sticker on just to remind them. And then Dr. Angela, you'll see now that Heather's got she's got her hand up. And so if you're on your top left of your screen, you should see that it'll tell you that one of your classmates needs help. And then I see that as a teacher too, both on the main dashboard screen, but then also I get a little pop-up on my screen on the iPad, and on the web version, it's at the top right. And it'll allow you to jump to that student slide automatically, which is pretty cool. So Heather recorded us an audio.
Is there a limit to how many students can help each other on each slide?
That's a good question. I'm actually not sure. I think once one student goes to help them, it clears the hand, and then I think they have to re-put the hand up.
Okay, so it's not like 15 students all flooding one slide. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm almost positive once one kid goes, then like the other one can't. So like right now, I can see that Dr. Angela's helping you right now. So like mine, and I wonder, we don't have anybody else logged in, so I'm not sure if they'd be able to jump on and do something with it. It is a feature where if they use it well, it's really cool.
Yeah.
Inevitably, you're gonna have the one kid that realizes like they're anonymous and is like, ha ha ha.
Yeah, of course.
So what do I do now? I'm here trying to help out Heather.
Oh yeah.
So I wonder, will it let you add the audio? So for the one, if you
let me re-raise my
you mark
hand.
up her slide. So on hers, you should be able to use all of the tools that are there. So the pen, the highlighter, the text box.
Yes, hello, I'm helping Heather.
Cool, yeah.
Oh yeah, so then that pops. Oh yeah, and then you could put my hand down.
Yeah, and so I'll have the kids I'll usually talk to the kids. I'll have them talk to each other, and so like I'll have them sometimes record things, and I'll ask them questions back, and then their homework is to respond to me, and it takes me a second to respond to each kid's audio, but it's a great way just for interpersonal speaking practice where they can listen to a question a few times and to personalize things to a degree.
Yeah, her audio recording actually popped up on my slide. So.
Oh, very cool.
This is reminds me of a kind of voice thread with a bit of a difference, and it's free.
Yeah, and so on the on a computer, the handwriting tool is obviously not great. I guess unless you have a mouse, maybe it's a little bit easier. But if they have a Chromebook where they can write on the screen, or in the case of an iPad, it's not the greatest handwriting recognition. Like Notability kind of blows it out of the water, and some of the other whiteboard apps. But in terms of having them right on the screen, and more, I have a pack of styluses in my classroom where kids can use to write. It's just such a great way to do a wide variety of things, and whether it's marking things up or writing sentences or diagramming or doing mind maps of different things, and then they could also submit pictures and add links, and so
This is great.
if you guys want to try it, there's on the very last slide, there's the link that'll take you to like the teacher getting started page. I'll show you how to create your own account, and then if you guys do and you want to add your class code, I can paste them into the slides so people can check out the ones you create, and I'd be happy to go in and check them out and see if you need any help with creating them. But
that's cool.
Yeah. But then I typically wouldn't add more to a slide than like is on what you guys can see. So like on the dashboard, like on the teacher end, you can see that like I can see everything that happened on that slide. And if you have more than that, you actually have to go into each student's work to then scroll and see what they did on it. So mine's lagging a little bit. I was trying to go into Dr. Angelos. But so I'd have to go in and then scroll down to see what's on the bottom part, which is, just a step that isn't necessarily super efficient where you're trying to give a lot of kids actual quality feedback. So to eliminate the scrolling of it. And the same thing goes on the iPad. It's really easy to tab down between students. So if I do zoom in on one, and then from here, I can go and I can just bump right down to Heather in one click. So I can see everything she did on there. So even this one I have set like a little low, but on the iPad, it goes like directly to the top of the screen. So when you design it, just try to keep it, like that half screen, even if you're just screenshotting things from a Google Doc and just pasting it right on there, just make sure it's about half a screen. And that way, then you can just cruise through them just a lot faster and give better feedback to kids.
Mm-hmm. This is really cool too, though. I like this a lot.
It's fun, and like the little manipulatives like take some time to make them, and you just screenshot them, but like it's fun, and like even my seniors in high school get a kick out of dragging pictures of vocab words around and matching them up, and I don't know, switch it up every once in a while. But then again, when we do things where with my seniors, we're studying the Spanish Civil War, and to look at the painting Guernica by Picasso, to have a bunch of links for them to jump out to the museum that currently has the painting in it, and then them hopping back and forth to their class, you can just jotting down their notes and their ideas, and then them adding their own links of things that they found. As it's kind of just you can take it to a wide variety of levels where it doesn't have to be as simple as dragging little pictures of pigs around.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of different things at it as well. I don't know if you guys had any other questions or anything else I can help with.
No, this is great.
Cool.
Yeah, this is really cool.
And then I've got my feedback form is on slide 8, as well as one Classic has kind of like a general PD one. And then I'll add my link to my evaluation form to the chat right now as well.
Super.
Thanks.
Well, thanks so much for sharing this, Chris.
Yeah, no problem. I'm a big fan of it, and I like to tell people about it. And it's one that kind of, regardless of your content area, there's a lot of different things you can do with it. Because I know a lot of times certain content areas feel like left out of certain apps and things, and so it's one that you can really customize to a wide variety.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, I just bombarded you guys with links in the chat.
Thank you.
So I'll show you guys on the iPad. It's pretty nice because you can just scroll through.
Oh, that is really nice.
So and then like I can run around the classroom and then like immediately jump into a kid's work, and then from here scroll down. And then with the stylus to to mark up writing and things, it's nice. Or, you know, even if I just have them take a picture of their homework, I can mark it up on there. I can do the same thing in Google Classroom too with the iPad and mark up student work, but just kind of a nice portable way to do it, a lot of different things.
And then it saves all of your work as you're giving them like the feedback, right?
Yep.
So if you had to like go back and like recheck on them.
Yep. It's there.
Okay.
Yep. And then like, you know, you can erase it once they've made changes, you can go back and erase. And so like on your slides too, like if I give you a bunch of feedback, let's see. So like Heather, I'll toss something on your slide 8. So like then you should have a little pop-up that allows you to hide my feedback.
Okay.
I guess it depends on the computer. I can't remember which side it's on. But there's a way where you can
Oh yeah, I see it.
So
it's
like
little like
yeah, and it's like a little squiggly.
Yeah.
So like when especially when students write and then I mark up their writing and, you know, circle stuff in word order and move stuff, they can hide it and it disappears, and they can erase and they can, you know, toggle it on and off, which is nice.
Yeah.
Because before they couldn't, they didn't have the toggle feature, and students would be like, "You gotta erase it. I can't see anything."
Oh yeah.
So like you as the teacher, you still have to go back through and erase it, but you can see like when they've made changes on it.
Okay.
And then same thing with the stickers. Like the stickers, I can add them and then erase them. So I can give you a like absent, like make sure you do it, and then once you do it, I can just I can get rid of the owl. They know they don't want squirrels. The squirrels are always the bad ones. It means you didn't do your homework.
Oh.
So like towards the end of a chapter, I'll be like, "Go clean up those classics. No more squirrels. No more más ardillas.
That's
no
funny.
más ardillas." So they all know the Spanish word for squirrel very quickly.
That's great. All right, well, I don't have any more questions.
Cool.
That was really interesting though.
Yeah, and if you end up anything, you guys, if you end up trying it and want me to take a look, or just want to like have someone try it out and see how it works, just shoot me the code, and I'm more than happy to check it out.
Awesome.
Thank you. And thanks for sticking around, Heather.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Appreciate
all
it.
day.
Come early, Chris. So, well done.
Okay, thank you. And then will this recording be up later on?
Yeah, it's probably going to take some time for it because
Yeah, I figure.
So yes, I'm going to stop recording now. And